Chapter 16. The young man drove the carriage swiftly through the night, and the young woman was holding tightly onto the young man's arm. Her head was resting on the young man's shoulder and her eyes were closed. Obviously she'd fallen asleep. The young man glanced at the young woman from time to time, and his eyes were filled with tender affection. "You really dote on your younger sister." Meanwhile, the mysterious woman's voice suddenly resounded in Zhou Xian's mind. Zhou Xian was slightly stunned when he heard her, and then he smiled. "I'm her older brother. If I don't dote on her, then who would?" She said, "You're a qualified older brother." Zhou Xian chuckled and said, "Senior, I heard that sword immortals can split mountains and rivers with a single swing of the sword. Is that true?" She replied, "It's true." Zhou Xian instantly felt a sense of longing when he heard this. A sword immortal. To soar through the world on a sword and see all the mountains and rivers. That was what Zhou Xian wanted as well. Meanwhile, the mysterious woman said, "So long as you work hard, then you'll have a chance to become a sword immortal as well." Zhou Xian grinned, "I will. Once I'm able to fly on a sword, then I'll take my younger sister to see the entire world." She said, "Look at how promising you are." Zhou Xian roared with laughter and sped up. 2 hours later, a wisp of dawn had appeared in the horizon. The sky was bright, but it was raining. Zhou Xian raised his head and noticed that the rain was growing heavier. It wasn't suitable for traveling any longer. Zhou Xian sped up, and it didn't take long for him to see an estate at the center of a mountain in the distance. From where he was standing, the estate was quite old and desolate. Zhou Xian frowned slightly when he saw the estate. Why is there an estate deep within a mountain? He didn't want to stop, but the rain was growing heavier and was accompanied by violent winds. It was truly unsuitable for traveling. Zhou Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he withdrew the map that Liu had given him. He found his current location on the map, and it wasn't marked as a dangerous area. Zhou Xian felt a little relieved. Then he stopped the carriage in front of the mansion. The door of the mansion was wide open. Zhou Xian sized up the mansion in front of him. Upon closer inspection, the mansion had clearly been abandoned for a long time. Weeds grew under the surrounding walls. Seeing that the rain had no intention of stopping, Zhou Xian carried Yi Ling into the abandoned mansion. The two of them came to a hall. There were 2 people in the hall. One was a gray-robed elder, and the other was a youth around 17 or 18 years old. The 2 of them were next to each other, so it was obvious that they were together. When the old man saw Zhou Xian and his sister, he only took a glance before withdrawing his gaze. As for the youth, he smiled and nodded his head as a greeting. Zhou Xian nodded slightly, then brought his sister to sit at the side. Zhou Xian started a fire and then he took out 2 turkeys and started roasting them. When he saw this, the eyes of the youth suddenly lit up, and then he ran over to Zhou Xian. "I'm Jiang Muki. How should I address you, brother?" Zhou Xian glanced at the youth. "Zhou Xian." Jiang Muki chuckled. "It's fate that we met. What do you think?" Zhou Xian pointed at the turkey on the fire. "Do you want to eat it?" Jiang Muki was slightly stunned, and then he nodded vigorously. Zhou Xian passed a turkey to the youth. "It's yours." Jiang Muki didn't refuse, and he took it and slowly roasted it himself. Jiang Muki glanced at Zhou Xian and chuckled. "Brother, although you are only at the air transformation realm, your foundation is so solid that it is not much weaker than mine." When he heard this, Zhou Xian's hand paused slightly, but he quickly returned to normal. "You're unfathomable." This was the feeling that the youth in front of him gave him. Actually, he didn't know that the feeling he gave the youth was the same. The youth's eyebrows twitched. 2 moves. As if he thought of something, he said again, "Don't go overboard." At this moment, the old man nearby suddenly said, "Don't bully others." When he heard the old man's words, Yi Ling, who was beside Zhou Xian, was instantly unhappy. She glanced at the old man. "Old man, my brother is also very powerful. Maybe my brother is bullying him." The old man glanced at Yi Ling. "Is that so?" Yi Ling looked at Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian smiled. "Then let's exchange 2 moves." Zhou Xian and Jiang Muki walked to the side. Jiang Muki smiled. "Can we begin?" Zhou Xian nodded. As soon as Zhou Xian nodded, Jiang Muki disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, a fist landed on Zhou Xian's chest. However, Zhou Xian's fist also landed on Jiang Muki's chest. Bang! Both of them retreated at the same time. After retreating for about a dozen steps, both of them stopped almost at the same time. Opposite Yi Xian, Zhang Yuki sized up Yi Xian and said in surprise, "Your physical body is even stronger than I imagined." Yi Xian said, "Yours too." His punch just now felt like it landed on an iron plate. Zhang Yuki smiled. "Our country of Zhang is really full of talents. After I came out of the palace I saw, aha." At this moment the old man nearby suddenly spoke. Zhang Yuki glanced at the old man helplessly. "Pavilion elder, what's the point of traveling if you have to worry about everything?" The old man shook his head. "The hearts of the people outside are complicated." Zhang Yuki smiled. "It doesn't matter. I can tell with one look that this brother is a straightforward person. He doesn't seem like a scheming person." As he spoke he looked at Yi Xian and cupped his fists. "Brother Yi, I am Zhang Yuki, the 10th prince of the Jiang country." "Prince?" Yi Xian was a little surprised. He didn't expect to meet a prince of the Jiang country at this place. Recollecting his thoughts, Yi Xian cupped his fists. "Yi Xian is just a nobody." Hearing this, Zhang Yuki laughed. "Brother Yi, with your strength, it's only a matter of time before you become famous." Yi Xian shook his head and didn't say anything. He didn't care about fame. Fame could often kill people. At this moment the rain gradually subsided. The old man stood up. "Your Highness, it's time to go." Zhang Yuki nodded slightly. He picked up the roast chicken that was already roasted to a golden yellow color and looked at Yi Xian. "Brother Yi, I have to go somewhere else. Goodbye." As he spoke up to this point he seemed to have thought of something. He took out a command token and passed it to Yi Xian. "Brother Yi, this is my command token. It should be of some use in the imperial city. Brother Yi, don't refuse it. Otherwise I won't dare to eat this roast chicken of yours." Yi Xian glanced at Zhang Yuki and accepted the jade token. When he saw Yi Xian accept the jade token, Zhang Yuki chuckled. "See you in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, the other old men turned around and disappeared at the entrance of the hall. Yi Xian looked at their backs and didn't speak for a long time. Outside the estate, the old man spoke in a low voice. "Your Highness intends to rope him in?" Zhang Yuki grinned. "He's a swordsman. But he was able to fight me equally without drawing his sword. If he did, then I'm afraid even I wouldn't be confident in my ability to defeat him." As he spoke he turned around and glanced at the abandoned estate. "As expected of someone that kingdom and thinks highly of. I didn't come all the way here in vain." The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, "Even though his foundation is solid and his combat strength isn't ordinary, he's all alone in the end. He doesn't have any clan or sect behind him, so his future is limited. Moreover, he doesn't have any clan or background, so his help to you is practically negligible. Perhaps it's exactly because of this that the eldest prince and the 9th princess didn't send anyone to Pine City." Zhang Yuki chuckled. "Big brother's mother is from the Yu clan, and it's the second most powerful clan in my Jiang kingdom. Even my imperial father has to fear it. On the other hand, my 9th sister is the commander-in-chief of the 3 armies and controls almost 50% of the troops in my Jiang kingdom. So they naturally wouldn't take a liking to these ordinary geniuses." The old man said, "Then why did you come all the way here, Your Highness?" Zhang Yuki spoke softly. "I don't have any advantage when compared to them. They can have their eyes set high, but I can't. Perhaps my befriending them today will allow me to obtain an extraordinary assistance in the future?" The old man shook his head. A swordsman was very rare indeed. However, if it was just a swordsman, then it would be meaningless unless it was a grandmaster in the sword Dao. But how difficult was it to become a grandmaster in the sword Dao? There was only a single grandmaster in the Jiang kingdom. Moreover, that grandmaster was already 90 years old. It had been almost 50 years since a grandmaster in the sword Dao had appeared in the Jiang kingdom. In the main hall. "Big brother, was that person really a prince?" Yiling asked curiously. Yi Xian nodded. "It should be." Yiling spoke softly. "He seems to have been waiting for Big brother on purpose." Yi Xian glanced at Yiling and smiled. Even among the aristocratic families, there are some who want to form cliques to strengthen their forces, not to mention the royal family. As he spoke he gently rubbed Yiling's little head. "Big brother only wants to cure your typhoid. Big brother has no interest in fighting for power." Yiling gently hugged Yi Xian. "Big brother, can I cultivate in the future?" Yi Xian smiled. "Of course you can. Of course, it doesn't matter if you can't. Big brother will work hard to become stronger and protect you for the rest of your life." Yiling smiled sweetly and hugged Yi Xian tightly. Although I really want Big Brother to protect me, I want to protect Big Brother even more. Yi Xian was about to speak when a voice came from the side. What a deep sibling relationship. As the voice fell, an old man walked in. It was Qin clan's elder, Qin Yu. Seeing this person, Yi Xian clenched his right hand and glanced at Yiling. Go to the side. Yiling glanced at the old man and whispered, Big Brother, be careful. Saying so, she obediently retreated to the side. Qin Yu sized up Yi Xian. Hand over those spirit stones and I'll leave you and your sister a whole corpse. Yi Xian clenched his fists and his face was ashen. He didn't speak. Qin Yu sneered. What? You want to fight? You're only at the Qi Change realm, but the old man is at the levitation realm. I don't even need one move to kill you. Although he said so, he was secretly on guard. Having lived to this point, he was not stupid and would not underestimate his enemy. Yi Xian said in a low voice, If I hand over that thing, can you let us brother and sister live? Qin Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. Bargaining? As he spoke, he slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, his clothes bulged up, and he seemed like a lion that was accumulating strength and waiting to pounce. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he withdrew a black pouch and tossed it at Qin Yu. Qin Yu was delighted when he saw the black pouch and he hurriedly caught it. However, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. Qin Yu's expression remained unchanged and he sneered, Old man, I knew you would play tricks. As he spoke, he flipped his right hand up and pressed it down. An explosion resounded. Bang! Yi Xian's punch had just been launched when his figure was blasted against the wall that was over 10 m away. The old man didn't stop after he blasted Yi Xian back, and he pressed forward and charged at Yi Xian instead. Yiling's expression changed drastically. Big Brother. She immediately pounced over to Yi Xian and hugged Yi Xian tightly. However, the old man's palm didn't stop there, and it slapped down towards the siblings. To be more precise, it was slapping down towards Yiling. Yi Xian's eyes almost split apart from rage when he witnessed this scene, and his mind had gone blank. It didn't take long for the old man's palm to come closer and closer. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly pulled Yiling behind him, and then the Lingxiao sword appeared in his grasp in the next moment. In the blink of an eye, a low sword howl resounded. He only had a single thought in his mind when he executed this attack. Kill. I must kill. Decide life and death with a single strike. At the same time, the mysterious woman's voice suddenly resounded within the pagoda. That fellow. He has a strong desire to kill anyone who touches his younger sister. P.S. I'm begging for all the tickets. Those who don't have tickets can do so, and those who have tickets can help me count them. Thank you. Chapter 17. The moment Yi Xian drew his sword, Qin Yu's hand, which was only half an inch away from Yiling's head, suddenly stopped. In the blink of an eye, Yiling's entire right hand fell off his body. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Qin Yu's expression changed drastically as he retreated rapidly. He retreated dozens of feet, but as soon as he stopped, a faint sword gleam appeared in front of him. This sword strike was not the second sword strike, but a wisp of sword gleam that was emitted from the first sword strike. At this moment, Qin Yu was horrified. Without thinking about anything else, he clenched his left hand into a fist and punched forward. This punch practically used up all of his life strength. At this moment of life and death, he naturally did not dare to hold back. When the punch was thrown, the sound of air exploding could be heard. The sword arrived. As soon as the fist and sword met, Qin Yu's entire left arm flew off, blood spurting out like a fountain. At the same time, Qin Yu's entire body was sent flying dozens of feet away. Yi Xian did not make another move, because at this moment his entire right arm had cracks and blood was flowing out continuously. Not only that, after that sword attack he felt as if his body was in turmoil. It was extremely uncomfortable and he even felt powerless in his limbs as if his entire body had been sucked dry. It was extremely uncomfortable. In the distance, Qin Yu looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. Sword Gleam. How is this possible? You're a swordsman. No, Sword Gleam. You're a great swordsman. No, you're only at the Qi transformation realm. There's no way you can emit sword gleams, let alone be a great swordsman. If one could master the basics of sword Dao, one could be called a swordsman. And swordsman was divided into ordinary swordsman and great swordsman. If a swordsman could use a sword as a medium to emit sword Qi and sword gleam, It meant that one's attainment in sword Dao had reached the level of a great swordsman. As for a great swordsman, it was relatively rare to see one. In the entire country of Jiang, there were less than 100 great swordsmen and most of them were over 10 years old. However, Yi Xian was only 18 years old. This was why Qin Yu was so shocked. Yi Xian looked at Qin Yu coldly. "Why are you still here?" Qin Yu was slightly stunned. In the next moment he turned around and disappeared from the sight of Yi Xian and his sister. As soon as Qin Yu escaped, Yi Xian collapsed to the ground. Yi Ling was shocked and quickly supported Yi Xian. He said in a trembling voice, "Brother, are you okay?" Yi Xian forced himself to sit down. Looking at the nervous Yi Ling in front of him, he forced a smile and said, I'm fine. Don't worry, I'm just going to meditate." With that he slowly closed his eyes. "Senior?" Yi Xian asked in his heart. The mysterious woman said, "I know what you want to ask. The sword of life and death is too ruthless. You're too weak now and can't bear its power. For you, every attack you make will hurt your enemy and yourself. The reason why I'm teaching you this sword skill at this time is because I want you to understand some principles. The sword Dao relies more on comprehension and it's also a kind of attitude. Your sword Dao will be the same as your attitude." Hearing this, Yi Xian fell silent. Comprehension? Attitude? What was the reason why he unlocked the sword of life and death? It wasn't because he cultivated diligently, but because at that moment he just wanted his sister to be safe. That was his thought. Just as the mysterious woman had said, the sword of life and death was actually not a sword skill, but a kind of sword Dao philosophy. The mysterious woman said, "The sword of life and death at your current level can barely be considered as a high-grade profound rank sword skill. And the reason you suffered such a huge backlash is because you haven't attained the energy resistance realm yet, so you're unable to truly control your energy. The sword light you executed earlier wasn't cultivated by you, and it's because the sword's skill itself is formidable. That's why you suffered such a backlash. Once you send your sister to the imperial capital, you have to find a way to devour spirit swords and attain the energy resistance realm as soon as possible." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand. No wonder I felt as if my body was emptied after I utilized this sword skill, and it was extremely uncomfortable. Fortunately, I severed that old man's arms with a single strike." When he spoke up to hear, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly to form a smile. That old man was at the airborne realm. "Idiot." The mysterious woman suddenly said coldly, "Even though that person's cultivation is extremely weak, he isn't someone you can go against right now. 50% of the reason you were able to sever his arms with a single strike earlier was because he'd been careless after he blasted you back with a single palm strike. If he knew that you were a swordsman and had taken precautions, then do you think you would be able to sever his arms with a single strike?" Yi Xian's expression instantly became solemn when he heard this. Right, if the old man had taken precautions from the beginning, then would he have been able to sever his arms with a single strike? After all, he'd lost completely when he collided with the old man's fist at the beginning. Moreover, it was because he'd attained the Aureate body realm. Otherwise, that palm strike from the old man would have been sufficient to crush him. The mysterious woman said, "The gap in cultivation between you and him is too huge. It's impossible for you to surmount 2 realms in succession with your current strength, unless you're able to grasp a Dao law and utilize the pagoda within your body." "Dao law?" Yi Xian said in a low voice. "Senior, I heard you speak of Dao laws in the past. What exactly are Dao laws? Where should I find them?" The mysterious woman said, "Once you become a grandmaster in the sword Dao, you'll understand what Dao laws are." Yi Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman continued, "There's one more thing. Don't only think about your younger sister. The second layer of the seal is showing signs of loosening. If you don't improve your strength as soon as possible, then the seal will vanish. At that time no one will be able to save you." The seal has loosened. Yi Xian took a deep breath. He naturally hadn't forgotten what the mysterious woman had said. The first layer had imprisoned a sword master, and that sword master had perished before he'd arrived here. So, the sword master on the second layer was definitely still alive. Once the seal was undone, perhaps the sword master would be the first to kill him as a sacrifice to the heavens. Fortunately, he still had some time. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and opened his eyes. At this moment, even though his entire body felt weak and powerless, it was much better than before. However, he had to be extremely cautious when he used this strike to decide life and death in the future. If the sword master didn't die, then it might be his death instead. If that old man had continued to attack, he would most likely have died. There was still a gap between him and the levitation realm. However, if he fought with his life on the line, he still had the strength to fight. At this moment, Yiling suddenly said, "Brother, are you all right?" Yi Xian looked at Yiling. Seeing that Yiling's face was still pale, Yi Xian smiled. "Don't worry, I'll be fine after some rest." Hearing this, Yiling's expression relaxed slightly. As if she'd thought of something, her expression dimmed. "Brother, I'm useless at all." Yi Xian said seriously, "don't think too much. Once you've recovered, I'll take you with me to cultivate. At that time, when you become a martial artist, you'll protect me, okay?" Yiling glanced at Yi Xian. "Can I really cultivate?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Definitely." Yiling clenched her little hands and looked extremely determined. "Brother, I'll definitely become a super powerful martial artist in the future. I'll protect you too." Yi Xian rubbed Yiling's little head and said with a smile, "I'll wait for that day." Yi Xian didn't know that his casual words had made the little girl in front of him remember them for the rest of her life. After resting for an hour, Yi Xian and Yiling continued on their journey. Thousand Mountain City. Yi Xian sped up because he realized that Yiling had to wear thick clothes even during the day. Moreover, she had to take 2 body-nourishing pills every time to suppress the cold air on her body. At this speed, the body-nourishing pills would be gone in half a month. That was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that he was afraid that the body-nourishing pills would be useless for Yiling's illness. If that was the case, the situation would be very serious. He had to hurry to the imperial city. Not long after Yi Xian and his sister left, the Qin family's master Qin Ba and Qin Yu, whose arms had been chopped off by Yi Xian, appeared in the main hall of the abandoned mansion. Looking at the 2 severed arms on the ground, Qin Yu's expression was extremely ugly. Qin Ba's face was also gloomy. After a while, Qin Ba said in a deep voice, "Is he really a great swordsman?" Qin Yu nodded. "If he wasn't a great swordsman, how could he chop off my arms?" Qin Ba clenched his fists tightly. His face was as calm as water. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, Qin Ba sighed softly. "We can't take revenge for this." Qin Yu's expression was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Indeed, a great swordsman, a young great swordsman at that. Just the thought of it was terrifying. How could the Qin family dare to continue taking revenge? At this time, Qin Ba said again, "However, we can't just let this matter go. Spread the news that Yi Xian has tens of high-grade spirit stones on him. I believe that many people will have thoughts about him when they hear this news." Hearing this, Qin Yu's expression relaxed slightly. "That's true. Although our Qin family can't continue taking revenge, we can let others do it." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at Qin Ba. "That person's name is Yi Xian? He's from the Yi family as well?" Qin Ba nodded. He was originally a prince of the Yi family. However, after the Yi family produced the one chosen by heaven, Yilang, he was ostracized and suppressed by the family. In the end, he was forced to swear to leave the Yi family and no longer be a member of the Yi family. Qin Yu was stunned and then he said, "Could it be that there's something wrong with the higher-ups of the Yi family?" Qin Ba nodded. "Right now, the Yi clan has practically become the laughingstock of the surrounding cities. You should know that Yi Xian was personally challenged by Nguosher, and it is said that Nguosher treated him differently. The heavenly phenomenon was also caused by Yi Xian and not by Yi Rong. However, the higher-ups of the Yi clan thought that it was Yi Rong who caused it, and celebrated without restraint. This group of Yi clan elders and patriarch are really pig brains, extremely stupid." Qin Yu nodded. "They really are. How's the Yi family doing now?" Qin Ba said indifferently, "They've been suppressed by the other clans to the point they can't even breathe. Right, even though we can't look for trouble with Brother Yi, we can use this as an excuse to gain some benefits from the Yi family. Come, let's go to Pine City and get even with the Yi family." As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Ba turned around and left. Qin Yu glanced at his severed arms, and he had a rather complicated expression on his face. This enmity is impossible to be avenged. Not only will I be unable to avenge myself, I'll be unable to avenge Qin Shang as well. Even though there was resentment in his heart, he was very clearly aware that it was time for this matter to come to an end. As a small aristocratic family, they had to understand one thing: and that was who they could offend and who they couldn't. If the Qin family still wanted to take revenge, then the outcome might be that the Qin family would fall into eternal damnation. After all, not only did Yi Xian possess monstrous strength, he was even thought highly of by Guosher. So the Qin family would be foolish to take revenge. A short moment later, Qin Yu turned around and left. Not long after that, the members of the Qin family rushed to the Yi family's residence. Chapter 18. Qingqing Yi family. The Yi family was no longer as glorious as before. To be exact, the Yi family was about to disappear from Qingqing. When the Yi family was in power, they had offended almost all the other families in Qingqing. Now the Li family, the Zhang family, and the city lord's palace were taking revenge on the Yi family. The territories and shops that the Yi family used to own had been devoured by the other families. Most importantly, the disciples of the Yi family did not dare to go out at all. If they went out, they would definitely be beaten to death. The Yi family was as pitiful as it could get. In the Yi family's water dungeon, the former grand elder of the Yi family was now locked up like a dead dog. After learning that Yi Lang had been killed, the grand elder's last hope was shattered. Sometimes he would go crazy. One day Yi Tsang arrived at the water dungeon. Yi Tsang walked to the first elder's cell. Looking at the first elder in the cell, Yi Tsang's expression was indifferent. "We've been fighting for our entire lives, but I never thought that the Yi clan would be defeated by the two of us." Inside the water dungeon, the grand elder mocked. "Yi Tsang, everyone says that I'm short-sighted. Aren't you the same?" Yi Tsang nodded. "I am indeed short-sighted. However, the Yi family will not be destroyed just like that. There will definitely be a day when we rise again." The grand elder smirked. "Are you still thinking that he will care about the Yi family in the future? If that's the case, stop daydreaming. You know this person's personality better than anyone. The Yi family has let him down. He will not care about the Yi family for the rest of his life." Yi Tsang was silent for a long time. Then he smirked. "Don't forget one thing. Rumor has it that when a person's strength reaches a certain level, their bloodline will mutate. Once the bloodline mutates, everyone related to the person will mutate as well, and their strength will increase exponentially." "Dream on." The grand elder smirked. "What kind of powerhouse would have such an ability? Even the Jiang country doesn't have it. Do you think that Yi Xian can?" Yi Tsang took 2 steps forward and smiled. "Do you know why I went against the majority and made him the crown prince back then?" The grand elder stared at Yi Tsang without saying anything. Yi Tsang smiled. Other than his personal strength, there was another reason. It was because of his mother. Yi Xian's mother. The great elder frowned slightly. He naturally had an impression of this person. She was a very ordinary woman who suddenly disappeared when Yi Xian was in his teens and had never appeared again. Yi Tsang slowly clenched his right hand. Back then, when Yi Xian's mother left with the black-robed man at the back door of the Yi residence, he was there as well. At that time, he clearly saw how terrifying the black-robed man behind Yi Xian's mother was. Levitation. What kind of expert could float in the air? Sky realm experts could only soar in the air for a period of time at most. But that person, both his feet were off the ground, floating in the air, and there was not the slightest fluctuation of profound energy around him. In the end, when the two of them disappeared, they broke through space. Break through space. He had only heard of such things in rumors. After that, he immediately appointed Yi Xian as the crown prince because he felt that the mysterious woman would come back one day and take Yi Xian and his sister away. At that time, the Yi clan would definitely reap great benefits. However, he did not expect that the woman had been gone for almost 10 years and had never returned. There was not even a single message from her. At that moment he suspected that Yi Xian and his sister had been abandoned by the other party. This was also the reason why his attitude toward Yi Xian gradually changed. However, he did not expect that Yi Xian would become a swordsman, and inexplicably become a swordsman, and his strength was unparalleled. He knew that it must have something to do with that mysterious woman. Yi Tsang collected his thoughts and looked coldly at the great elder in the water prison. The stronger Yi Xian is now, the more the Yi clan will be mocked and humiliated. However, we will endure until the day he ascends to the clouds and changes his bloodline. Even if the hope is slim, we still have some hope. As for you, great elder, you will never have any hope for the rest of your life. We did not kill you but locked you up because we want to tell Yi Xian that the Yi clan is apologizing. The Yi clan will wait for him to calm down even if it takes 10, 20 or 30 years. As for you, just stay here. Until you die. With that he turned around and left. Inside the water dungeon the great elder was silent for a long time. Then he suddenly laughed like a madman. A moment later the great elder laughed maniacally. Yitsong, oh Yitsong, you're even more stupid than I thought. He knew Yi Xian's personality better than anyone else. He was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, and he was also a person who held grudges. Calm down. If he hated the Yi clan, it meant that he still cared about the Yi clan. There was still hope for the Yi clan. However, Yi Xian did not even hate the Yi clan anymore. Since he did not hate them anymore, how could he calm down? 3 days later in Xianxia City. Xianxia City was a bustling city located in the north and south of Jiang country. It was surrounded by countless mountains, hence the name Xianxia City. The reason why Xianxia City was bustling was because of the largest chamber of commerce in Jiang country, the Drunken Immortal Restaurant. The Drunken Immortal Restaurant was a mysterious force that had branches in hundreds of countries in Qingzhou. The cities that had them would definitely be prosperous. That was because they had a means of transportation. The cloud ship. The so-called cloud ship was a flying tool. With it, the distance between cities would not be so far. In fact, the distance between countries would not be so far. This time he was going to Xianxia City to take the cloud ship to the imperial capital. This was the most prosperous place in Jiang country. In the carriage in front of the city gate of Xianxia City, Yiling looked at the city and blinked. Wow brother, it's so big. It's much bigger than our Qingcheng. Yi Xian nodded and smiled. It's really big. Yiling shook Yi Xian's arm lightly and said coquettishly, brother, let's go shopping later, okay? Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. Okay. They had been traveling all this time. Not to mention Yiling, even he felt bored. It's good to go shopping. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian brought Yiling into the city. The streets were very wide and they were a few meters wide. The city was filled with people and carriages, and it was much livelier than Qingcheng. Yi Xian brought Yiling to an inn and asked for a room. Now that Yiling's condition was not stable, he naturally didn't feel at ease leaving her alone in a room. After arranging a place to stay, Yi Xian brought Yiling to go shopping. On the streets, Yiling looked around like a cheerful elf. After a short while, Yiling had some small toys in her hands. When he saw how happy Yiling was, the smile on Yi Xian's face grew wider. When the brother and sister passed by a small stall, the mysterious woman's voice suddenly resounded in Yi Xian's mind. Wait a moment. Hearing this, Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he pulled Yiling to a stop. Senior? Yi Xian asked in his heart. The mysterious woman said, there's a purple ring on the stall next to you. Buy it. Yi Xian turned to look at the stall and he glanced at it. At the corner of the stall, there was an inconspicuous purple ring. The stall owner was a middle-aged man. He glanced at Yi Xian and said with a smile, brother, what do you want to buy? Yi Xian picked up the purple ring. How much is this? He didn't ask why the mysterious woman wanted him to buy this ordinary ring because he knew there must be a reason. After all, this mysterious woman usually didn't speak, and it was rare to see her take the initiative to speak. The middle-aged man glanced at the purple ring on Yi Xian's hand and said with a smile, 10 gold coins. Hearing this, Yi Xian slightly frowned. 10 gold coins was a bit expensive. However, he didn't hesitate to take out 10 gold coins and pass it to the stall owner. The stall owner chuckled when he saw that Yi Xian didn't bargain, and he hurriedly put the gold coins away. He was overjoyed. After all, he was even willing to sell it for 3 gold coins. Yi Xian was just about to turn around and leave when a voice suddenly resounded from the side. Wait. Yi Xian looked towards the source of the voice, and he saw a little girl who was around the same age as Yiling walking towards him. The little girl had white lips and red teeth. She wore a white cotton jacket and she had a little braid on the back of her head. She looked extremely cute. The little girl glanced at the ring on Yi Xian's hand, and then she turned around to look at the stall owner. I'll pay 20 gold coins for this ring. The stall owner was stunned, and then he was in a slightly difficult position because he'd already sold it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at the little girl and said with a smile, little sister, this ring, who's your little sister? The little girl suddenly interrupted Yi Xian coldly. Yi Xian's expression froze and he was momentarily speechless. What kind of temper does this little girl have? Yiling, who was next to Yi Xian, looked at the little girl with displeasure. How can you say that? My brother has no ill intentions. The little girl looked at Yiling and she was slightly stunned when she saw Yiling. In next to no time, a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. As she looked at Yiling, that trace of surprise turned into shock, and then it quickly turned into wild joy. For a moment the little girl's expression changed several times, and Zhou Xian was stunned. Yiling also felt a little uneasy from being stared at and immediately asked, "Why are you looking at me?" The little girl's expression returned to normal. She wanted to speak but she seemed to have some misgivings. After a moment of silence she said, "What's your name?" Seeing that the little girl did not have that domineering attitude, Yiling replied, "Yiling." As she said that, she hugged Zhou Xian's arm. "This is my brother Zhou Xian." The little girl looked at Zhou Xian coldly, and then her gaze fell on Yiling again. It was obvious that she was hesitating about something. Zhou Xian pulled Yiling away, but at this moment, the little girl suddenly took out a fist-sized red stone and handed it to Yiling. "This is for you." Zhou Xian and his sister were stunned. The little girl stuffed the stone into Yiling's arms. "This is a heaven fire warm jade. If you keep it on you, it can temporarily suppress the cold in your body." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression changed greatly. "You," the little girl ignored Zhou Xian and said, "I have urgent matters to deal with now, so I can't take you with me. I'll look for you in 3 months at most." As she said that, she looked at Zhou Xian coldly. "For your sister's sake, I'll give this ring to you." After saying that, she looked at Yiling again and turned around. Zhou Xian was stunned and then he chased after her. But the next moment the little girl was already dozens of feet away. In an instant, the little girl had completely disappeared from Zhou Xian's sight. Zhou Xian was stunned. In a corner. The little girl walked to a corner. As soon as she stopped, a black-robed man silently appeared behind her. The black-robed man knelt on one knee. "My lord." The little girl said coldly, "Keep an eye on that pair of siblings. Oh, you can't follow them. You'll attract too much attention. Find someone weaker to follow them. Remember, don't let anything happen to that little girl." The black-robed man said solemnly, "My lord wants to keep that little girl?" The little girl slowly closed her eyes and said excitedly, "I didn't expect that a small country like Jiang would have such a physique. If it wasn't for the cave that the sword master left behind being too important, I would have taken her away right now." The black-robed man said solemnly, "Although the sword master's cave has been discovered, the sword formation he left behind can't be broken. Rumor has it that his sword is needed to remove the formation. However, the sword master has disappeared for 1,000 years, so where can we find his sword?" The little girl said calmly, "It doesn't matter. Everyone gathered here to find a way to break it." The black-robed man nodded his head. He seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Does my lord want to keep that little girl's brother?" The little girl shook her head. Although his foundations are not bad, his dantian is broken, his physique is average, and his spiritual roots are average. What is the point of keeping him? Is it a waste of rice? After saying that, she turned around and left. P.S. Recently I saw many old readers leaving comments and many of them giving me tips. I really appreciate everyone's support. Chapter 19. After the little girl left, Zhou Xian came back to his senses. He brought Yiling back to the inn. Inside the room, Yiling looked at the heavenly fire-warm jade in his hand and exclaimed, "Brother, this stone is so warm. My body doesn't feel so cold anymore when I hold it." Zhou Xian smiled. "It's good that it's warm." Yiling nodded happily and held the heavenly fire-warm jade tightly. On the other hand, Zhou Xian sat aside and closed his eyes slowly. "Senior? That person just now?" Zhou Xian asked. The mysterious woman said, "You're not on the same level as him. There's no point in asking." Zhou Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman said, "Take out the ring I told you to buy." Zhou Xian took out the purple ring. The ring was a little shabby and there were some parts missing. It didn't look special. "Do you know what this is?" the mysterious woman asked. Zhou Xian shook his head. The mysterious woman said, "This is an array formation ring and a small array formation is hidden within it. Although the array formation is relatively low level, it is exquisite and the technique used is brilliant. It has a certain amount of research value, and that's probably why the little girl wanted it earlier. As for you, you can use this formation to protect yourself." Zhou Xian was a little surprised. This small ring can hide a small formation? The mysterious woman said, "In the future, go around the world more often. The world is bigger and more exciting than you can imagine." Yi Xian nodded. "Once I can fly on a sword, I'll definitely go around." As he spoke, his eyes fell on the ring in his hand. "Senior, how do I use this formation?" The mysterious woman said, "Drip a drop of your blood on it. Then use the method I taught you to control the ring." Hearing this, Yi Xian hurriedly did as he was told. Soon, when his blood fell on the ring, he instantly felt a strange connection with it. In his mind, a formation appeared out of nowhere. 5 Thunder Formation. The array formation in the ring was called the 5 Thunder Array. Once the array formation was activated, it could strike the enemy with divine thunder. Divine thunder. Yi Xian was somewhat shocked as he asked, "Senior, can this formation really attract divine lightning?" The mysterious woman said, "Of course not. Divine lightning is the might of the heavens and the earth, so how could it be drawn over by a small formation like this? The divine lightning it mentioned was created by the creator of this formation using some methods. Even though its might is far inferior to true divine lightning, it's extremely useful to you now. Once you touch this formation, even a skyward realm expert would find it difficult to resist. However, this realm must have been damaged, so it can only be activated 5 more times." Yi Xian was instantly overjoyed when he heard this. If he executed life and death with a single sword strike with his current strength, then he would be able to go against a levitation realm expert. However, the price to pay was truly too great. This was the true meaning of harming the enemy while harming oneself 800. With this ring, he would have a way to save his life. But soon Yi Xian's expression turned bitter. Because he realized that activating the 5 Thunder Formation required spiritual stones. Moreover, they were high-grade spiritual stones. Every time it was activated, it would require at least 5 high-grade spiritual stones. He only had a total of 16 high-grade spiritual stones right now. In an instant he felt so poor. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. "Senior, since you're so perceptive, why don't we go treasure hunting in the future? With your perceptive ability, we'll definitely be able to earn a lot." "What kind of dream are you having in broad daylight?" The mysterious woman suddenly interrupted Yi Xian's words. "You want me to go treasure hunting with you? The hole in your brain isn't ordinary." Hearing this, Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly and did not speak. However, the mysterious woman's voice turned cold. "You can't rely on luck in everything you do. You've gotten a great bargain today. That's your luck and you deserve it. However, if you think about taking advantage of others every day, then your temperament will be ruined. Don't think that I'm just trying to scare you. As a swordsman, temperament is the most important thing. You must remember this." Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, "Senior, don't be angry. I understand." The mysterious woman did not speak again. Seeing this, Yi Xian immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He was not afraid of this mysterious woman, but he respected her. 2 hours later, after Yi Ling had fallen asleep, he entered the prison pagoda. Training. Although he could not break through to the chi-controlling realm, he could train his sword skills. In reality, he did not have any sword skills at all. When he sparred with the shadow, he relied more on his reflexes. Skills were fixed. When he sparred with the shadow, he trained his strength, speed, and reflexes. Although he could not reach the chi-controlling realm now, he could train the chi-changing realm to the extreme. After all, within the same realm there were strong and weak. On the first level of the prison pagoda, the sound of swords clashing against metal rang out continuously. There was only the sound of metal clashing. When there was still 2 hours until dawn, Yi Xian fell asleep. And 2 hours later, Yi Xian woke up on time. After paying the bill, Yi Xian sold the carriage to the inn at a low price, then left the inn with his sister, heading to Thousand Mountain City's Ship River. When the brother and sister arrived at the Ship River, they were both shocked by the scene in front of them. In front of them was a river that was nearly 1,000 feet wide, and there were several large ships. Each ship was at least 100 feet wide, extremely large. The brother and sister had never seen such a large ship before. Beside Yi Xian, Yi Ling said excitedly, "Brother, this ship is so big. Wait, are we going to take this?" Yi Xian nodded and said with a smile, "Wait, we are going to the imperial capital on this." Yi Ling tilted her head and looked at Yi Xian and asked curiously, "Brother, is the imperial capital bigger than Thousand Mountain City?" Yi Xian rubbed Yi Ling's little head lightly. "It's definitely bigger than Thousand Mountain City. When we arrive at the imperial capital, Brother will accompany you to see the prosperity of the imperial capital and have some fun, alright? Hearing this, Yiling's eyes lit up. Brother is the best. As she spoke, she stood on her tiptoes and lightly kissed Yi Xian on the cheek. Yi Xian laughed, and then he pulled Yiling along as they walked towards the distance. Because Yi Xian had inquired about the process of taking the cloud ship the night before, the brother and sister quickly bought the tickets and boarded a cloud ship. Yi Xian's heart ached slightly. Buying 2 cloud ship tickets to the imperial capital had cost him a total of 40 gold coins. Now he could be considered to be a true pauper because he had less than 10 gold coins left. At this moment he felt like robbing someone. There were over 100 rooms of various sizes on the cloud ship, and the rooms were divided into various grades. Yi Xian asked around and found out that a first-class room required 150 gold coins, and a second-class room required 100 gold coins. However, this wasn't the most terrifying. The most terrifying was the special class room, and it required 300 gold coins. In Green City, some ordinary families would probably be unable to earn so much gold coins in their entire lifetimes. But here it was only a single ticket. At that moment, Yi Xian noticed that being poor had limited his imagination. Yi Xian brought his sister to the room at the lowest level of the cloud ship. The room was very small and there was only a bed, 2 stools and a table. It was extremely simple. Yi Xian rubbed Yiling's head. There's still an hour before the ship takes off. After the ship stabilizes we can go to the deck and look at the scenery below. Yiling smiled sweetly. As if she had thought of something, she turned around and rummaged through her bag for a while. Soon she found a pair of cloth shoes and presented them to Yi Xian as if she was presenting a treasure. Brother, I hooked these. Come and see if they fit. Saying that, she squatted down and started to take off Yi Xian's shoes. Meanwhile, Yi Xian was already stunned. When did she hook them? At this moment, Yiling suddenly let out a wah. Yi Xian hurriedly lowered his head. Yiling covered her nose and rolled her eyes at him. Brother, your feet are so smelly. Saying that, she turned around and ran out like a wisp of smoke. Soon she returned to the room. This time she carried a basin of water and placed it in front of Yi Xian. Then she carried his feet and placed them in the basin. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Brother, you can do it yourself. Yiling glared at him, then lowered her head and slowly washed Yi Xian's feet. As she washed, tears suddenly welled up in Yiling's eyes. This was because the soles of Yi Xian's feet were covered with a thick layer of calluses. Moreover, there were many scars on his calves that hadn't healed yet. These were all left behind by him when he had risked his life for the Yi family when he was the heir. Sensing Yiling's objection, Yi Xian said softly, Why are you crying? Yiling wiped the tears off her face. Brother, you've suffered too much in your life. I swear that I will definitely become a super expert in the future. I will earn a lot of money so that I can live a good life. She had been brought up by her brother. However, many people didn't know that when their mother had left, Yi Xian had only been 10 years old. He was only a half-grown child, whereas she had only been 4 or 5 years old. In the beginning, the 2 siblings had lived like beggars in the Yi family. They could only rely on leftovers to survive. And it was in such an environment that Yi Xian had brought her up by force. Even she didn't know how much hardship he had suffered. Especially after Yi Xian had become the heir, he had risked his life for the Yi family. She only remembered that her brother had gone out in the day and only returned at night. Moreover, every time he returned, his body would be covered in injuries. Hearing Yiling's words, Yi Xian felt a trace of warmth in his heart. He gently rubbed Yiling's little head. Your health is more important than anything else. After we go to the capital this time, there are so many capable people there. They will definitely cure your illness. When you recover, I will teach you how to cultivate. Yiling gently washed Yi Xian's feet. Her tone was incomparably firm. Brother, if I recover, I will definitely cultivate properly. No matter how much hardship I have to endure, I won't be afraid. Yi Xian smiled. Just as he was about to speak, the room's door suddenly opened. Soon a middle-aged man and 2 old men entered the room. Yiling was shocked and quickly stood up. Who are you? The middle-aged man who was leading the group glanced at Yi Xian. Do you still remember me? Yi Xian nodded. He naturally remembered them. They were the 3 people who'd pursued Xianxia in the forest, and he remembered that the middle-aged man was called Mo Xian. Yi Xian fell silent. It was obvious that they were here for the spirit stones. However, he hadn't expected that they'd actually chased him all the way to the cloud vessel. Meanwhile, Imogen spoke abruptly, "Hand it over and we'll let you and your sister live." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "Fighting is prohibited on the cloud vessel." Imogen laughed coldly, "So long as we kill you and your sister, then find a time to toss your corpses off the vessel. Would anyone even bother to investigate?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "You'll let us live if we give it to you?" Imogen's eyes narrowed slightly, "Of course. We're only after wealth." Yi Xian took a deep breath. "Fine, I don't have the life to enjoy it." As he spoke, he withdrew the black pouch and walked towards Imogen. "You better keep your word." Imogen's eyes instantly burned with desire when he saw the black pouch. Of course. He slowly clenched his right fist. When Yi Xian was a few steps away from Imogen, he suddenly tossed the pouch to an old man by Imogen's side. Imogen and the others were slightly stunned. The old man instinctively wanted to catch it while Imogen instinctively tried to seize it. Right at this moment, a cold glow flashed. A sword suddenly appeared in front of Imogen. By the time Imogen regained his senses, the sword had already pierced his throat. In an instant, Imogen's head flew into the air. Blood sprayed. On the other side, two old men were horrified and they immediately turned around and fled. However, Yi Xian's sword was even swifter. They'd only just turned around when Yi Xian's sword pierced through one of their backs. He'd been killed instantly. However, the other old man had charged forward. Not only had he charged forward, he'd even shouted madly for help. At this moment, all the guests on the first floor were alarmed. Yi Xian's expression was slightly unsightly. He sheathed his sword because he knew that things were getting troublesome. Soon, a woman in a purple dress and a veil walked into Yi Xian's room with a group of guards. Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly, and his expression was slightly grim. He couldn't sense the veiled woman's strength, but he could sense the strength of those guards. 3 of them were at the airborne realm and 2 of them were at the peak of the chi-controlling realm. This lineup was simply too terrifying. It should be said that the drunken immortal in strength was terrifying. The veiled woman glanced at the corpses on the ground, and she frowned slightly before she looked at Yi Xian. "You killed them?" Yi Xian nodded and explained, "They wanted." The veiled woman flicked her sleeve and turned around. "Go down and explain to the others. Kill them on the spot and throw their corpses off the ship." At this moment, Yi Xian opened his right hand and a sword floated in his palm. The veiled woman who had already reached the door suddenly stopped. She turned around and looked at Yi Xian with a trace of surprise in her eyes. "Swordsman?" Yi Xian nodded. The veiled woman shook her head. "It's rare to become a swordsman at such a young age, but that's all. The rules of this ship are greater than the heavens. Even if you're a swordsman, you can't violate them. Kill them for me." After saying that, she turned around and was about to leave. At this moment, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes, and his right hand suddenly gripped the sword tightly. In an instant, the sword trembled slightly, and a faint sword light flickered on the body of the sword. Everyone present was stunned. The veiled woman also stopped once again. Yi Xian looked straight at the veiled woman. "I'm sorry, I'm the great swordsman." As he said this, his face didn't turn red and he wasn't out of breath. He was extremely calm. In fact, he was panicking inside. Chapter 20. A great swordsman? Of course, he wasn't a great swordsman. The main reason why his sword could emit sword light was that he had activated the one sword life and death art. And this sword light was a special characteristic of this sword's skill. As for himself, he hadn't reached the level of a great swordsman, but of course he wasn't far from it. After the spiritual sword in Yi Xian's hand emitted a faint sword light, the room suddenly became quiet. The few experts who had walked in front of Yi Xian stopped, and their eyes were filled with shock and solemnity. In their eyes, although a swordsman was rare, an ordinary swordsman wasn't a rare thing, but a great swordsman was different. How many people were there in the whole country of Jiang? And the recorded number of great swordsmen didn't exceed 100. This wasn't a big deal. The most terrifying thing was how old was this young man in front of them? What kind of terrifying force could cultivate such a young great swordsman? At this time, the veiled woman suddenly looked at the 2 corpses on the ground. "Throw these 2 corpses down to feed the dogs and catch the man who just escaped, beat him to death and throw him off the cloud boat." With that, she looked at Yi Xian in front of her. "Arrange a special classroom for this young master, don't neglect him." After saying that, she turned around and left. In the room, the guards bowed slightly to Yi Xian and then turned around and left. One of the guards said respectfully, "Young master, please follow me." After a slight hesitation, Yi Xian followed with Yi Ling. Under the guidance of the guard, the brother and sister arrived at the special classroom. After entering the special classroom, the brother and sister were completely stunned. Big. Very big. The entire special classroom was at least 10 times bigger than the room they had been staying in before. The interior was also incomparably luxurious. The surrounding layout was simply like a palace. Even the feet were paved with an unknown animal skin which was soft to step on. Behind Yi Xian and his sister, the guard bowed slightly and then left. Wow! Yi Ling looked around in amazement. Brother, this room is so big and beautiful. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head and smiled without saying anything. Yi Ling seemed to have thought of something. She lifted her head and looked at Yi Xian. Brother, is it because you're the great swordsman that they treat us like this? Yi Xian nodded. Why? Yi Ling was puzzled. Yi Xian smiled and said, because of reality. Yi Ling wanted to ask more, but at this moment there was a knock on the door. Yi Xian turned around and said, please come in. The door opened and a woman walked in. It was the purple-robed veiled woman from before. The veiled woman sat to the side and gestured with her hand. Young master, please sit. Yi Xian sat opposite of the veiled woman. Yi Ling obediently sat not far away and curiously stared at the veiled woman. The veiled woman poured a cup of tea for Yi Xian. This is the tip of immortal spirit bamboo. Young master, please have a taste. Yi Ling slightly nodded. Miss is too polite. After saying that, he took a sip. The tea went down his throat. It was sweet and refreshing, very comfortable. Goody. Yi Xian put down the cup and looked at the veiled woman in front of him. This one is Yi Xian from Qingcheng. The veiled woman looked at Yi Xian. Han Xiangmeng. Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. She only said her name. Obviously, she didn't want to reveal too much. Han Xiangmeng gently took a sip of tea and said, young master has reached great swordsman at such a young age. You must be from a famous sect. May I know where your master is? She asked about his background. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. Seeing this, Han Xiangmeng frowned. Young master, what do you mean? Yi Xian looked at Han Xiangmeng in the eye. Miss Han, forgive me for being blunt. When you make friends with someone, do you look at their background? Han Xiangmeng's eyes narrowed. Obviously, she didn't expect Yi Xian to say that. Yi Xian said again, Miss Han, the most important thing when making friends with people is sincerity. You shouldn't play tricks or look at their family background. Of course, if this is how Miss Han wants to make friends, then forgive me for not keeping you company. After saying that, he stood up and looked at Yi Ling, who was not far away. Let's go. Yi Ling obediently ran to Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian left without a trace of hesitation. However, when the two of them reached the door, Han Xiangmeng suddenly said, young master, please wait. Yi Xian stopped walking. Han Xiangmeng softly said, I was rude before, please don't blame me. Yi Xian turned to look at Han Xiangmeng. Miss Han, I will remember your kindness for letting me off the hook for killing someone. I will definitely return this favor in the future. Saying this was actually treating them as strangers. Han Xiangmeng naturally understood the meaning behind Yi Xian's words. However, she didn't explain further. Instead, she slightly nodded. It's getting late. Young master, please rest early. After saying that, she turned around and left the room. Outside the room, an old man appeared behind Han Xiangmeng. Miss. Han Xiangmeng stopped walking. As expected of a swordsman. His temper isn't ordinary. The old man nodded. A swordsman is a loner. His temper is a little weird. Miss, revealing your name earlier was already a sign of sincerity. But this guy actually thinks that Miss is arrogant. Really? Han Xiangmeng shook her head. It doesn't matter. He has a straightforward personality. Although others don't like him, he's still much better than those who say one thing but say another. Pass down my orders. Before they reach the capital, they will stay in this special room. Their daily meals must be provided according to the special room's treatment. Do not neglect it. After saying that, he quickly disappeared into the distance. Inside the room. Brother, is the great swordsman powerful? He should be very powerful. Brother, aren't you the great swordsman? Of course I am the great swordsman. I will be soon. Wow, brother, you're lying. You know too much. Brother will kill you to silence you. Hee hee, I'm not afraid. An hour later, Yi Xian covered the sleeping Yi Ling with a blanket and entered the prison pagoda. Cultivate. Only the strong would be respected. The reality of society told him this all the time. He was now at the peak of the air shift realm and the peak of the little swordsman realm. His speed, strength, and reflexes were almost at the limit. It could be said that although he was at the air shift realm, his strength was not something that a normal chi-controlling realm expert could contend against. As for those in the same realm, he was not invincible, but there were very few who could match him. However, he knew very well that martial arts was like rowing a boat against the current. If he did not advance, he would fall behind. Thus, he did not dare to neglect it. Now, when he fought against the shadow, he could already fight evenly with the shadow. Naturally, he was not satisfied with this. His goal was to defeat the shadow. Inside the prison pagoda, Yi Xian was alone. He was used to being alone. As for the mysterious woman, under normal circumstances she did not speak. Yi Xian did not disturb her. Because he knew that the other party would definitely not chat with him. Cultivation was boring and lonely. For hours later, Yi Xian stopped. He stood on the spot with his sword in hand. His whole body was drenched in sweat. Yi Xian looked at the Ling Shao sword in his hand and then said, "Senior, why is it that every time I spar with this shadow I feel like I've already reached my limit, but the next time I spar with it I feel the same way again? Did Senior strengthen this shadow?" After a while, the mysterious woman's voice sounded. "The fact that you have this feeling proves that you are improving every time. As for the limit, there is no limit. Although your foundation is not bad, it is only in places like Qing City and Jiang Country. If you were to be placed in the big sects, it would be average. Therefore, it is beneficial for you to stay at the air shift realm for a while. Of course, you cannot stay for too long. You still have to find a way to solve the problem of the spiritual sword." Yi Xian nodded. Understood. What he needed to do now was to improve in all aspects before he reached the chi-controlling realm. Instead of cultivating, Yi Xian took a bath and rested. Cultivation had to be done in moderation. Otherwise, he might die from cultivating. 3 hours later, Yi Xian woke up. Yi Ling woke up as well. Soon, breakfast was sent over. There was a plethora of dishes and the two of them ate almost all of it. It couldn't be helped. They were used to living a poor life. It was rare for them to have a good meal, so they naturally couldn't waste it. After eating, Yi Xian and Yi Ling walked out of the room and came to the deck of the cloud ship. At this moment, the cloud ship was in the air at least a few hundred meters above the ground. Countless people had gathered on the deck. The two of them walked to the front of the ship. This area was only accessible to people in special rooms, and it was the best location. Yi Xian looked up. In the distance, mountains surrounded them and birds flew over from time to time. "Wow!" Beside Yi Xian, Yi Ling said excitedly, "Brother, look, those mountains have become smaller." Yi Xian rubbed Yi Ling's head lightly, and then he looked up into the distance. Looking at the green mountains and white clouds in the distance, Yi Xian was a little entranced. In the past, when he was on the ground, the scenery he could see was limited. But now that he was in the air, what he saw was completely different from what he saw on the ground, and his thoughts were somewhat different as well. Qing City was small, but the world was huge. He was small, but the world was huge. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian's expression, she instantly calmed down. She knew that her brother was probably thinking about something, so she walked to the side of the ship and held the railing with both hands. She exclaimed, "It's really beautiful. What a country bumpkin." At this moment, an ear-piercing voice sounded in Yi Ling's ear. Yi Ling turned around and saw a little boy standing not too far away. He was about the same age as her, and he was dressed very luxuriously. But he was too fat and his eyes were almost hidden by the pile of flesh. Yi Ling withdrew her gaze. She didn't want to cause trouble for her brother. However, the little boy walked over to Yi Ling's side, sized up Yi Ling, and then had a look of disdain on his face. "Look at your clothes, there are actually patches. Don't tell me you can't even afford to buy clothes?" Yi Ling said indifferently, "It's fine as long as I can wear clothes. In any case, having big brother is enough." The little boy patted his clothes and said complacently, "Do you know what this is made of? This is made from the skin of a demon beast, a spirit fox. It's worth 100,000 pieces of your clothes." Yi Ling glanced at the little boy's clothes and said, "I don't care. I have big brother." The little boy took out a translucent jade, and Yi Ling's gaze was instantly attracted to it. The jade was pure and flawless, and it was extremely beautiful. Seeing that Yi Ling was attracted, the little boy said proudly, "This is a high-quality spirit jade and it's worth thousands of gold. Do you have it?" Yi Ling snorted, "I have big brother." The little boy said angrily, "Can you not call me big brother?" Yi Ling ignored the little boy and looked up at the distant sky and said softly, "I only have big brother. P.S. Everything during the book period. Recommendation votes, monthly votes, whatever you have. Thank you for your support." Finally, seeing the comments from readers every day, this feeling was really good. During the period when I didn't publish the book, I felt empty every day as if I was missing something. Now that I have your company, I feel really comfortable. Chapter 21. Only Big Brother. Yi Ling suddenly smiled. As having Big Brother was enough. Next to Yi Ling, the little boy suddenly asked, "Is your big brother very powerful?" Yi Ling nodded and said seriously, "Of course." The little boy grunted, "No matter how powerful he is, he's not as powerful as Daddy." Yi Ling glanced at the little boy. "Your daddy is powerful too?" The little boy immediately got excited and nodded hurriedly, "Of course. He's the city lord of Thousand Mountain City. Everyone in Thousand Mountain City has to listen to him." "City lord." Yi Ling blinked. "Wow, that's very powerful." The little boy said proudly, "Of course. In Thousand Mountain City our family is the most powerful." Yi Ling sized up the little boy and said, "My big brother said that one should keep a low profile. Otherwise it's easy to get beaten up outside." But the little boy shook his head. "If someone wants to beat someone up, it'll be my dad, not me." Yi Ling was completely dumbfounded. What kind of scam was this? The little boy suddenly pointed at Zhou Xian nearby. "Is that your big brother?" Yi Ling nodded. "That's my big brother. Handsome, right?" The little boy grunted. "What's the use of being handsome? It's not like you can eat it." Yi Ling giggled. "If you're handsome, you'll be able to get a wife in the future." The little boy grunted. "I have money. I can get as many wives as I want." Yi Ling shook her head. "Little fatty, let me tell you, money isn't everything." The little boy objected. "That's not it. My dad said that money makes the world go round. There's nothing in this world that money can't do. If there's something, then it's because I don't have enough money. So, I want to earn a lot of money." At this point he seemed to have thought of something and said angrily, "You called me little fatty. Am I fat?" Yi Ling sized up the little boy. Judging from his size, he weighed at least 100 kilograms. She spread her hands. "Aren't you fat?" The little boy said angrily, "My dad said this is strong." Yi Ling shook her head and looked at the boy pitifully. "Your father is so kind." The little boy's expression was somewhat ugly. After a moment he asked again, "Am I really that fat?" Yi Ling nodded. "Very fat." The little boy clenched his fists and said angrily, "They all lied to me." Yi Ling did not care about the little boy. Instead she retreated to Yi Xian's side. She did not disturb Yi Xian. Instead she gently hugged Yi Xian's arm and leaned her head on Yi Xian's arm. Seeing this, the little boy snorted coldly. He turned around and ran to a middle-aged man who was chatting with someone nearby. "Dad, give me a brother." The middle-aged man. The cloud ship passed over 1,000 mountains and came to a huge river. The river was so long that the end couldn't be seen, and it was at least several thousand zhang wide. It was a real river. As for Yi Xian, he was still as motionless as before. He just stared ahead like an old monk in meditation, thinking. In this period of time Yi Xian rarely thought, nor did he have the time to think. Now that he boarded the cloud ship and saw the boundless mountains and rivers, his heart was moved. His mind was suddenly filled with many thoughts. He had never had so many thoughts before. In a private room, a plain-clothed old man looked coldly at Han Xiangming in front of him. "I heard that you let an unknown youth stay in a special class private room?" Han Xiangming nodded. "That's true. What, does Elder Gu want to interfere with such a small matter?" The plain-clothed old man said coldly, "Not everyone can stay in a special class private room. You should know this better than anyone else." Han Xiangming smiled lightly. "He is not an ordinary person. He is a great swordsman. It shouldn't be a problem for me to rope him in, right?" "Great swordsman?" The plain-clothed old man sneered. "Are you lying to a child? A 17 or 18-year-old youth is a great swordsman. Why don't you say he is an Lan and Xiuan Kingdom scholar?" Han Xiangming frowned. "Elder Gu, are you purposely looking for trouble?" Elder Gu sneered. How would I dare? Miss Han, although the higher-ups have sent you to take over Thousand Mountain City and the Imperial Capital's Merchant Association, according to the clan's order, this order can only take effect after you arrive in the Imperial Capital. Someone is coming. As soon as Elder Gu's voice fell, 2 guards walked in. Elder Gu said indifferently. Those 2 siblings do not have the qualifications to stay in the special class private room. Throw their things out. The 2 guards bowed respectfully before retreating. Han Xiangming looked coldly at Elder Gu. It seems that Elder Gu has steeled his heart to show his loyalty to someone. Elder Gu sneered. My apologies. I don't understand what Miss Han is saying. I am only doing what I should do. If Third Miss feels that something is wrong, you can complain to the higher-ups. Han Xiangming nodded. I will remember this. With that, she turned and walked out of the private room. Inside the room, Elder Gu sneered. You want to rope people in, but they won't let you. With that, he walked out of the private room. He was about to step down from his position. At this time, if he didn't show his loyalty to the people behind him and put in some effort, he was afraid that he would be retiring when he returned. Before, he couldn't find an opportunity. But now he finally found one. On the deck of the cloud ship, Elder Gu brought 2 guards behind Yi Xian. When Yi Ling sensed this, she let go of Yi Xian's arm and looked at Elder Gu and the others. May I ask who you are? Elder Gu glanced at Yi Xian behind Yi Ling and sneered. With his strength, he could naturally see through Yi Xian's realm. Yi Xian was only at the Qi transformation realm. A great swordsman? This was ridiculous. Elder Gu turned to look at the guard beside him. The latter nodded slightly and threw Yi Xian and his sister's baggage in front of Yi Ling Yu. Yi Ling was completely dumbfounded. She didn't know what was going on. At this moment, many people around them looked over. Elder Gu sneered. Is this special class cabin something you can stay in? Yi Ling hurriedly explained. It was that big sister who asked us to stay there. Did you pay? Elder Gu interrupted Yi Ling. Do you have proof of the ticket? Yi Ling was a little anxious. She hurriedly explained again. It was that big sister who asked me and my brother to stay there. You can ask that big sister. Elder Gu sneered. No ticket, no proof, full of nonsense. I think you deliberately snuck into the special class cabin. When he spoke up to hear, his expression turned cold. Guards. Kill these 2 fellows and toss their corpses off the ship. 2 guards walked towards Yi Xian and Yi Ling. Yi Ling's face turned pale. She hurriedly stood behind Yi Xian and said aggrievedly, It was you who asked us to stay there. How can you do this? You bully us. Elder Gu sneered. You don't have a ticket to the special class cabin, but you are staying in the special class cabin. You are looking down on the drunken immortal restaurant. Let alone killing you and your sister, I can even kill your entire family. Taking advantage of their power to bully others. That was how everyone felt right now. However, no one dared to speak. This was the drunken immortal restaurant. And those who dared to speak would not offend Elder Gu for the sake of 2 people they did not know. In next to no time, one of the guards grabbed Yi Ling and dragged her to the side. Yi Ling's right arm was directly dislocated. Yi Ling's face was instantly covered in cold sweat from the pain. However, she desperately crawled towards Yi Xian. The guard furrowed his brows and kicked Yi Ling's abdomen. Bang! Yi Ling's entire body was sent flying by this kick, and then she smashed heavily against the wall of the ship before she fainted. In the distance, the fat boy was about to rush over when he saw this scene. However, he was held back by the middle-aged man beside him. The little boy glared angrily at the middle-aged man. Dad, they are bullying us. The middle-aged man shook his head. Let's see what's going on first. At this moment, not far away, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Yi Xian looked ahead. The world is very big and I am very small. However, the heart can be infinitely big. The world can imprison my body, but it can't imprison my heart. The heart is infinite and the sword is infinite. Thinking up to this point, Yi Xian instantly felt comfortable. In an instant, the Ling Xiao sword suddenly rushed out of his body. Buzz! A sword hum resounded through the sky. The Ling Xiao sword hovered above the cloud ship. At this moment, everyone on the cloud ship looked at Yi Xian. Not far away, next to the little boy who was talking to Yi Ling, the middle-aged man said in disbelief, How is this possible? Clear sword heart. What was clear sword heart? Clear sword heart meant that one's sword heart was clear and one's heart was clear. One had a clear goal and concept for one's sword Dao, and would not be confused by external things. This was a mysterious realm of swordsmen. And this realm was also known as Quasi-Sword Dao Grandmaster. Throughout history, those who had a clear sword heart would become Sword Dao Grandmasters in the future. And now, the only Sword Dao Grandmaster in the country of Jiang used to have a clear sword heart. On the other side, Han Xiangming was also stunned. Her watery eyes were filled with disbelief. After Yi Xian came back to his senses, he looked to the side and smiled. I. In the next moment he was stunned. When he saw Yi Ling's appearance not far away, Yi Ling felt as if his acupuncture points had been hit. Soon he rushed to Yi Ling like a madman and picked up Yi Ling with trembling hands. What happened? As he spoke, he suddenly roared like a wild beast. Who did it? At this moment the fat little boy quickly pointed to Elder Gu and the two guards not far away. It's them. They hit her. The one who hit her was that guard. Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and looked at the guard. In the blink of an eye, under the gaze of countless people, Yi Xian directly rushed out. Seeing that Yi Xian had made a move, Elder Gu suddenly shouted angrily, "How dare you? This is not a place for you to behave atrociously." As he spoke, he was about to make a move. However, Yi Xian's sword suddenly changed direction and pointed directly at Elder Gu. The surrounding people were stunned. Elder Gu was in the levitation realm. Elder Gu narrowed his eyes slightly. You overestimate yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, he clenched his fists. In the blink of an eye, an invisible force shook out of his body. At this moment the sword arrived. On the long sword, a sword ray suddenly burst out. One sword to determine life and death. Sword ray. The great swordsman. Such a young great swordsman. Everyone around was immediately petrified. At this moment Elder Gu was also stunned. It really was the great swordsman. Elder Gu was shocked, but at this moment he could not care so much. He clenched his fists tightly and suddenly punched forward. On his fists, two powerful forces burst out like a flood. However, when they encountered the sword, the two forces were instantly torn apart. In the blink of an eye, under the gaze of everyone, both of Elder Gu's arms were directly sent flying. Elder Gu screamed in pain and then quickly retreated. The two guards next to him were about to act, but Yi Xian flashed beside them like a ghost. Swoosh swoosh. Two bloody heads flew into the air, instantly killing a chi-controlling realm expert. The surrounding people were shocked and many of them could not help but take a step back. On the other side, the little fatty was also dumbfounded. Her brother is so powerful. After killing the two guards in an instant, Yi Xian raised his head and looked at Elder Gu not far away. Elder Gu was shocked. I am an elder of the Drunken Immortal Restaurant. If you touch me, you will be touching the Drunken Immortal Restaurant. Yi Xian raised his sword and walked towards Elder Gu. Seeing this scene, Elder Gu was shocked and repeatedly retreated. At this moment, Han Xiangming suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Han Xiangming said in a deep voice, Young Master Yi, it is time to stop. If you continue to cause trouble, it will not end well. Han Xiangming's voice stopped abruptly because Yi Xian's hand had grabbed her throat. Han Xiangming looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. She was very calm. Yi Xian's expression was ferocious. You were the one who allowed us siblings to stay in the special classroom, but he came out to make things difficult for us siblings. This matter has something to do with you, right? The mysterious woman had already told him everything, so he had already figured out the ins and outs of the matter. Han Xiangming looked straight at Yi Xian. If you continue to cause trouble, it will not end well. Yi Xian laughed sinisterly. This is your internal matter, but you want to implicate my sister. This matter started because of you, but you did not do anything to stop it. You deserve to die. After saying that, his left hand suddenly tightened. He was really going to kill her. However, the moment he tightened his grip, Han Xiangming had already silently retreated several feet away. At the same time, an old man appeared in front of her. The old man looked coldly at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, do not cause trouble for the power behind you. Yi Xian looked at the unconscious Yi Ling. At this moment his heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife. Suddenly he laughed crazily. 'Cause trouble? Us siblings were fine, what did we do? Why did my sister end up like this? After saying that, he opened his palm and the Ling Shao sword appeared in his hand. In his palm the Ling Shao sword trembled violently. Not only that, as if it had sensed Yi Xian's killing intent and anger, The Ling Shao sword actually let out a series of sword cries. He was going to use one sword to decide life and death again. Seeing that Yi Xian was going to continue, the old man squinted his eyes. On the other side, Han Xiaoming's expression was also extremely ugly. This was a mutual destruction. At this moment she was extremely regretful. If she had known this would happen, she would have stopped it earlier. Such a young sword Dao grandmaster who had just achieved a clear sword heart. She was not afraid of the drunken immortal in, but to become enemies with a genius like this, needless to say, she would never be put in an important position in this lifetime. The most terrifying thing was that it might cause a conflict between two superforces. After all, the talent and battle strength that Yi Xian had displayed was too terrifying. This person definitely had a powerful force behind him. If that was the case, whether it was her, Elder Gu, or all the guards and stewards on the cloud ship, they would all be implicated. Just as Yi Xian was about to make his move, the mysterious woman's voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's mind. Have you thought of the consequences of this sword? Yi Xian laughed crazily. My sister has ended up like this, what consequences do I have to think about? Chapter 22. Just as Yi Xian drew his sword, a voice suddenly sounded from the side, brother. Although the voice was as soft as a mosquito, Yi Xian's entire body trembled. Yi Xian stopped, turned around and ran to Yi Ling's side. Then he gently picked up Yi Ling. His hands were trembling. In this lifetime he could draw his sword for his sister and he could also sheath his sword for her. Seeing that Yi Xian did not make a move, Han Xiaoming and the old man heaved a sigh of relief. Once Yi Xian made a move, there would really be no turning back. Fortunately, the little girl was still alive. Otherwise, the worst outcome would be that Yi Xian would die, but all of them would be severely punished. The force behind Yi Xian might even take revenge on them until they were killed. No matter what the outcome was, it was not what they wanted. At the side, Elder Gu was about to slip away, but he was slapped to the ground by the old man beside Han Xiaoming. Han Xiaoming looked coldly at Elder Gu. Wait for your judgment. Hearing this, Elder Gu's face instantly turned ashen. On the other side, Yi Xian carefully held Yi Ling in his arms. Looking at Yi Ling's pale face, this young man who had never cried despite being injured countless times in the past was now bursting into tears. Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian and said softly, brother, don't cry. I'm not in that much pain. Yi Xian hugged Yi Ling tightly and cried like a child. It's brother's fault, it's brother's fault. At this moment, the middle-aged man walked in front of Yi Xian with the little fatty. Little friend, I brought a doctor with me. Can you let him take a look? Yi Xian hurriedly said, yes, thank you. The middle-aged man smiled and turned to look at the old man in black. The old man nodded and then squatted in front of Yi Ling. After a moment, the old man said softly, it's fine, they are all external injuries. As for the dislocated hand, the old man has already reconnected it. She just needs to rest for a few days. However, there is a cold energy in her body. The old man has never seen it before. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said in a low voice, it's fine as long as there are no other problems. As for this cold energy, I will think of a way in the future. Yi Xian cupped his fists at the middle-aged man. I'm Yi Xian. May I know your name? The middle-aged man said, Lord Lu Xiaoran. Lord. Yi Xian was slightly startled, but he quickly cupped his fists again. Thank you for little sister's matter. Lu Xiaoran smiled. It's a small matter. Yi Xian nodded. Then, holding his sword, he turned around to face Elder Gu, who was not far away. Seeing this scene, Lu Xiaoran was slightly startled. Not only Lu Xiaoran but the surrounding people were also startled. This guy still won't let it go? Han Xiaoming and the old man beside her had their faces sunk. Elder Lu was an elder of the drunken immortal house. Even though he was only a small elder in the outer house, he was still an elder of the drunken immortal house. No matter what, they couldn't let him be killed by Yi Xian. Otherwise, it would be the same as slapping the drunken immortal in's face. Yi Xian walked in front of Elder Gu, while Han Xiaoming stood in front of Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, the drunken immortal in will deal with this matter. Don't worry, we will severely punish him and give young Master Yi an explanation. Yi Xian looked at Han Xiaoming coldly. Get lost. Han Xiaoming's brows instantly knitted together. Just as she was about to speak, Yi Xian walked in front of her and looked straight at her. You were the one who allowed us to move in, but he came to make things difficult for us brother and sister and you didn't stop him. Let me guess, you probably want to see my true strength and background, and at the same time, you want me to become enemies with this person so that both of us will be injured, and then you will be the fisherman who benefits, right? Han Xiaoming slowly clenched her fists. Her heart was filled with shock. Because what Yi Xian said was exactly what she was thinking. Elder Gu roared with laughter. Isn't that exactly what she meant? But she greatly underestimated your feelings for that little girl, and she greatly underestimated your strength. Otherwise she would have risked her life to protect that little girl and then befriend you and do you a favor. Unfortunately she miscalculated. But right at this moment Yi Xian's sword suddenly pierced through the center of Elder Gu's brows. His blood splattered. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. This was a public provocation against the drunken immortal Inn. Han Xiaoming's face turned slightly pale at this moment. This wasn't the end, it had just begun. Yi Xian sheathed his sword, and then he turned around and walked over to Yi Ling. I want everyone who bullies you in this world to never see the next sunrise. Yi Ling's tears immediately flowed out. Just at this moment the cloud ship suddenly came to a stop. On the other side of the cloud ship, a red-crowned crane flew over. The red-crowned crane was extremely huge with a wingspan of at least 10 zhang. On the back of the red-crowned crane stood a scholarly middle-aged man. The middle-aged man held a white jade fan in his hand. It didn't take long for the crane to descend onto the cloud vessel, and then a powerful gust of wind instantly blasted countless people back. The middle-aged man walked down slowly from the crane. Han Xiaoming and the old man's expressions changed drastically because they hadn't expected this person to be here. They immediately hurriedly walked over and bowed slightly. Greetings, Tower Master Han. The city governor of Thousand Mountain City, Lu Xiaoran, had a solemn expression on his face when he heard this. The drunken immortal Inn had a total of 9 levels, and every single level had a tower master. Not only did every single tower master possess enormous authority, their strength was unfathomable as well. Tower Master Han was probably in charge of everything within the drunken immortal Inn, and even the king of the kingdom of Jiang had to be courteous to her. Tower Master Han nodded slightly, and then he glanced at Elder Gu's corpse and said, "He's dead." Han Xiaoming and the old man didn't dare answer him, and they just lowered their heads slightly. Tower Master Han turned around to gaze at Yi Xian, and then he sized up Yi Xian while a trace of surprise could be seen in his eyes. Such a solid foundation is quite rare. Not only that, he's also a swordsman and has a clear sword heart. How rare. I never expected the kingdom of Jiang to be filled with so many geniuses. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings. Everyone, this is a private matter of my drunken immortal Inn. Go rest. How could they dare to stay here? They hurriedly turned around and returned to their rooms. On the other hand, the city governor of Thousand Mountain City, Lu Xiaoran, glanced at Yi Xian, and then he brought the unwilling little fatty back to his room as well. Only a few people remained on the deck of the cloud vessel. Tower Master Han's gaze descended onto Yi Xian once more. It's impossible for a person like you to appear in an ordinary place. Tell me, which power do you belong to? I'm really curious about exactly what made you dare to kill a member of my drunken immortal Inn. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. What? Would I be able to live if the power behind me was great? Tower Master Han shook his head. No. You killed an elder of my drunken immortal Inn in such an open and above-board manner, and that's an act of contempt towards my drunken immortal Inn. So no matter who you are or who's behind you, you must die today. Even though it's a pity, it can't be helped. My drunken immortal Inn can't lose face amongst the kingdoms of Pine Prefecture. As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and added, I'm asking about the power behind you because I want to decide if I should pursue the matter, not because I'm afraid of the power behind you. There's no power in the kingdom of Jiang that my drunken immortal Inn can't afford to offend. Yi Xian fell silent. Power? How could he have any power? He didn't even have any backing. However, he still didn't regret killing those fellows. Brainless? Impulsive? He admitted that he was brainless and he admitted that he was impulsive. However, if he was given a choice, he would do the same without hesitation. Because if he didn't kill those fellows, the drunken immortal Inn would at most punish them. Even if they were to be punished, they would return to their comfortable lives in a few years' time. As for his sister, would she be beaten up for nothing? No. He could endure being beaten up for his sister. However, Yi Xian could not bear to beat up his sister. Tower Master Han said indifferently, "Why? You don't want to say?" Yi Xian smiled, "There's no power behind me. Really, I'm not lying to you." Tower Master Han squinted her eyes. "Without any backing, you dared to kill my drunken immortal In's men?" Yi Xian stared at the scholarly man in front of him. "Since the drunken immortal In is bullying others, I killed them. It's that simple." The scholarly man chuckled. "Bullying others? In this world only the strong are respected. My drunken immortal In is bullying others. Just endure it and you will have your own place in the future. To ruin your future just to vent your anger, you are stupid, do you know that?" Yi Xian straightened his back. "How can a swordsman's spine bend?" The scholarly man smiled. "Swordsman, that's true. A swordsman that bends is no longer a swordsman. Forget it. Since you said that you don't have any backing, then you will bear this alone. I will be with Big Brother." At this moment Yiling suddenly hugged Yi Xian. She stared at the scholarly man. "Us siblings will bear this together." Tower Master Han glanced at Yiling and smiled. "All right, I will help you two siblings." As she spoke, she looked at the old man not far away. "Hang their corpses at the bow of the ship. Let the world know what happens to those who offend my drunken immortal In. I will also let the world know that my drunken immortal In is bullying others. If you are not satisfied, then feel free to come." As she spoke, she turned to leave. But at this moment, the sword on Yi Xian's waist trembled violently. Yi Xian was stunned. Tower Master Han turned to look at the bow of the ship. Not only Tower Master Han, everyone else also looked at the bow of the ship. At the bow of the ship, a woman had appeared out of nowhere. She had waist-length hair and wore a plain dress. Her back was facing them and her right hand was behind her back. Between her fingertips, there was a black and a white object spinning. She stood at the bow of the ship and looked down at the ship, allowing the wind to lift her hair and dress. Everyone was stunned. Who was this person? On the other hand, Tower Lord Han's expression sank because he didn't notice when the woman appeared there. Just as Tower Master Han was about to speak, the woman suddenly spoke. "Let me teach you what it means to bully others. I will let your drunken immortal In fight the best. If you use two swords, it will be my loss." Chapter 23. Yi Xian was stunned when he heard this voice. What a familiar voice. In the next moment his figure trembled. Because it was the voice of that mysterious woman from within the pagoda of Pagoda. "He's out. She can come out." Yi Xian was completely stunned. Tower Master Han's eyes narrowed slightly when she heard the mysterious woman. "You want my immortal indulgence brothel to come out? What high-sounding sentiments. Not to mention you, even the largest empire in Pine Prefecture, the Dark Han Empire, wouldn't dare to speak so rashly. After all, the immortal indulgence brothel's forces didn't just exist in the kingdom of Jiang, it covered the entire prefecture. Dynasties had changed countless times in Pine Prefecture, but the immortal indulgence brothel still existed. That was sufficient to prove it. The mysterious woman didn't speak. Under the gazes of the crowd, she lightly flicked her jade-like hand, and in an instant, the river water below suddenly gathered. In the blink of an eye, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, the river water condensed into a water sword. Moreover, the river had practically been instantly drained dry. The expressions of everyone here had changed when they witnessed this scene, including Tower Master Han. What sort of ability is this? Watch carefully. Suddenly, the mysterious woman's voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Determine life and death with a single strike of the sword." As soon as she finished speaking, the water sword in her hand suddenly transformed into a ray of light that flashed through the surroundings. Was it fast? It wasn't fast at all. Everyone here had witnessed it clearly. However, Tower Master Han's expression had changed violently at this moment. Because he was the target of the sword and it was extremely slow in his eyes as well. What did this mean? It meant that he wasn't able to discern the essence of this attack at all. This attack had exceeded the scope of his understanding. Even then, Tower Master Han didn't just stand there and wait for death to descend upon him. He suddenly pressed his palms together, and then a ray of golden light instantly appeared around him. At the same time, he swiftly formed a seal with his hands and pushed it forward. Mountain Guard Seal. As soon as he finished speaking, A golden disc made of energy suddenly appeared in front of him, and the mountains in the surroundings trembled violently. In next to no time, countless strands of earthen yellow energy shot out violently from the mountains, and the golden energy surged into the golden disc like rivers flowing into the ocean. At this moment, the golden disc trembled violently, and the golden light that erupted from it caused even the scorching sun in the sky to pale in comparison. Under everyone's gaze, the mysterious woman's sword arrived. Everyone thought that the world would collapse, but the next scene caused everyone to be petrified on the spot. When the water sword was still a few feet away from the golden disc suddenly shattered, transforming into golden energy that scattered across the sky. The water sword's speed was still very slow. Under Tower Lord Han's incredulous gaze, it approached him bit by bit. He had no way of resisting and could only allow the water sword to reach his forehead. As for the mysterious woman in the distance, her back was still facing them. He did not turn around at all. Utter defeat. He was completely defeated with a single sword strike. Han Xiangming and the old man were shocked to the point their bodies trembled. Zhou Xian didn't know Tower Lord Han's strength, but they were clearly aware that Tower Lord Han's strength could definitely be ranked in the top 5 in the country of Jiang. Yet at this moment she'd been defeated with a single attack? Is she an expert at the Sword Master realm? Meanwhile, the mysterious woman's voice resounded abruptly. A single attack determines life and death. If I want him to live, then he will live. If I want him to die, then he will die. If I attack, then my enemy's life will be at the mercy of my sword. Understand? Zhou Xian gulped. I don't really understand. The mysterious woman nodded slightly. That's normal. If you explain it clearly, then I'll have to beat you up. The profundity of this sword technique isn't something that you can comprehend right now. However, now that you've seen this attack of mine, you should have a rough understanding of it. It'll be extremely beneficial to you. Zhou Xian bowed deeply. I understand. The mysterious woman nodded and continued. Ask the strongest fighter of the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion to come forth. If he can't finish him with a single attack, then I'll consider it my loss. Everyone. Tower Lord Han looked at the mysterious woman and smiled bitterly. Senior, this time my Immortal Indulgence Pavilion. Tower Lord Han's voice suddenly stopped because the water sword between his eyebrows had already pierced half an inch into his forehead. Fresh blood flowed out. The mysterious woman's voice resounded again. You're too weak, so don't speak. I won't kill you because I want you to watch how I use my power to bully your Immortal Indulgence Pavilion. Now call the strongest fighter of your Immortal Indulgence Pavilion out. At this moment, Tower Lord Han's expression was as ugly as if he had eaten 10 caddies of shit. He knew that the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion had kicked an iron plate this time. However, why would there be such a terrifying expert in this tiny country of Jiang? At this moment, a black dot appeared in the distant sky. Soon the black dot grew larger and larger. At the same time, a loud laughter resounded in the sky. I am the 8th floor lord of the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion. I wonder how my Immortal Indulgence Pavilion has offended you for you to be so angry. At this moment, the water sword between Tower Lord Han's eyebrows suddenly shot into the sky, into the distant sky. In the blink of an eye. Ah! A miserable cry resounded in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, a bloody old man's head slowly fell from the sky. Tower Lord Han's face instantly turned pale when he saw this. At this moment he knew that he had greatly underestimated the mysterious woman's strength. He was not a sword master at all. He might even be a swordsman at the Sword Emperor level. A Sword Emperor, an Emperor of Swords. Tower Lord Han's face turned even paler when he thought of this. If it was an expert of this level, even though the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion could resist, he would lose his position as floor lord after offending such a peerless expert for no reason. Not only would he lose his position, but he might even suffer the pain of purgatory. Because the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion had already lost a floor lord this time, and judging from the woman's attitude, she showed no signs of giving up. The commotion on the ship was naturally huge, and the experts of the surrounding powers had sensed it. However, none of them dared to get close to the ship, and they only dared to watch from afar. Everyone knew that a peerless swordsman was killing people here. On the ship, the water sword floated next to the mysterious woman. The mysterious woman pointed at Tower Lord Han with the water sword. Call for help, continue to call for help. Tower Lord Han smiled mournfully. Senior, this is our fault. Please don't be angry, we will. One of Tower Lord Han's arms flew off. The mysterious woman said calmly, next time you speak nonsense I will cut off your head. If I tell you to call for help, then call for help. Understand? Tower Lord Han's expression was extremely bitter. Call for help? He naturally could still call for help, but looking at the situation now, even if he called for help he would probably die. Not calling for help? This mysterious woman clearly would not give up. This time the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion had failed. Thinking of this, he glanced at Zhou Xian not far away. Damn, didn't you say there was no one behind you? That's it. If you had someone you should have said so earlier. If you had said there was a sword emperor behind you, why would I make things difficult for you? As for Zhou Xian, he was still slightly stunned. He knew that the mysterious woman was definitely not an ordinary person and was very strong, but he didn't expect her to be so strong. He didn't expect the mysterious woman to help. Although the mysterious woman had come to help, he had a bad feeling because he noticed that there was something wrong with the world prison pagoda within him. It was as if all the imprisoned existences were about to come out. When he thought of this, he broke out in cold sweat. Right at this moment, a gray-robed old man mysteriously appeared on the ship. Someone else has come. Zhou Xian hurriedly looked at the gray-robed old man. The gray-robed old man looked very old with white hair and a sage-like aura. The gray-robed old man ignored everyone in the surroundings. His gaze descended upon the mysterious woman, and then he bowed slightly. I am the third Tower Lord of the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion. Greetings, Senior Sword Immortal. Sword Immortal. Hearing this, Tower Lord Han's eyes instantly opened wide. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Sword Immortal? How many Sword Immortals were there in the world? Or rather, how many Sword Immortals were there in the entire firmament world? In any case, one had never appeared in the entire prefecture. The mysterious woman said, You're not bad. You've cultivated to such a level so you're qualified to receive a strike of my sword. As she spoke, the sword by her side trembled slightly. Meanwhile, the old man hurriedly said, Senior, please calm down. Your strength has exceeded the scope of the prefecture, so I naturally wouldn't dare to receive a strike from you. Moreover, with your strength and identity, I presume you wouldn't make things difficult for us juniors. Obviously, the meaning behind his words was that I can't defeat you, so don't bully me. Make things difficult for me? The mysterious woman chuckled. Your Immortal Indulgence Pavilion wanted to hang my... Yes, that little fellow's corpse on the bow of this ship. You even said that there's no power in the prefecture that your Immortal Indulgence Pavilion can't offend. Your Immortal Indulgence Pavilion wants to use its strength to bully others. Your Immortal Indulgence Pavilion sure is arrogant. The old man didn't explain himself because doing so before such an expert was no different than courting death. He glanced at Zhou Xian, who was standing nearby. Subsequently, he walked up to Zhou Xian and bowed deeply. Young friend, my drunken immortal restaurant has offended you in the past. Please forgive us. Zhou Xian naturally knew that the old man was apologizing because of the mysterious woman, so he didn't act arrogantly. However, he didn't speak as well. It was best to remain silent at a time like this. The old man turned around to glance at Tower Lord Han. The latter was about to speak when the old man waved his right hand and a powerful force enveloped Tower Lord Han. Bang! Tower Lord Han was instantly transformed into ash. The old man turned around and bowed slightly to the mysterious woman. Senior, please calm your anger. The mysterious woman didn't speak. She just waved her hand lightly, and then the water sword suddenly flew off the ship and fell into the dried river. The water sword fell to the ground. Bang! In an instant, the river from before had appeared once more. Moreover, all the living beings within the river were still there. The old man's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene, and he was beyond shocked. On the other hand, the mysterious woman gradually became ethereal, and it didn't take long for her to vanish from their fields of vision. At the instant she vanished completely, her voice resounded once more. Chapter 24. The deck of the cloud boat suddenly fell silent. The gray-robed old man remained silent. His expression was calm, and it was impossible to tell if he was happy or angry. He was obviously angry. The drunken immortal had never been treated this way. Although he was angry, he did not dare to show it. A sword immortal. The mysterious woman was most likely a sword immortal. If she really was a sword immortal, then the drunken immortal in really could not afford to provoke them. The drunken immortal in could fight against a sword immortal with all its strength, but it was only a fight. Moreover, who knew if the sword immortal had any friends? Or a powerful faction? Even if she had no friends or faction, she alone was enough to destroy the drunken immortal in. A sword immortal. How terrifying was the battle strength of such a person. Apart from the guardians of heaven and earth, the worst person to provoke was a swordsman. And the worst person to provoke was the guardians of heaven and earth, the swordsman. Therefore, even if the mysterious woman's words were a slap to the face, the gray-robed old man did not dare to say anything. One must know that the swordsman had an extremely strange temper. If he were to say anything, he might die here today. The gray-robed old man withdrew his thoughts and glanced at Zhou Xian. It was obvious that the mysterious woman had stopped because of the young man before him. The swordsman was a loner, but once he had a disciple he would no longer be a loner. A sword immortal's disciple. The gray-robed old man's expression was rather complicated. He should have tried his best to rope such a person in, but it had come to this. With this thought, the gray-robed old man walked in front of Zhou Xian. He sized up Zhou Xian and pointed with his finger, causing a purple card to land in front of Zhou Xian. Young friend, the matter between you and the drunken immortal inn is over. This is a VIP card of the drunken immortal inn. It's a small token of my appreciation, please accept it. Han Xiangming suddenly explained, this is a purple card. With this card you can enjoy a 50% discount on anything you buy in the Drunken Immortal Inn. Apart from that, if you sell anything in the Drunken Immortal Inn, the Drunken Immortal Inn will not charge any commission. Not only that, this card also has many other benefits. Young master, you will find out in the future. Zhou Xian naturally didn't refuse. He accepted the purple card and cupped his fists. Junior is going to rest. Goodbye. After that he pulled Yiling away. After Zhou Xian and his sister left, Han Xiangmeng and the old man beside her slowly knelt down. The gray-robed elder slowly closed his eyes. Your grandfather used to be one of my subordinates. Of course, I didn't treat him as a subordinate. I treated him as a brother. You're his granddaughter, so you're also half my granddaughter. Han Xiangmeng slightly lowered her head, not daring to speak. The gray-robed old man shook his head. You're his only bloodline, so I don't want to kill you. But don't interfere in the matters of the Drunken Immortal restaurant for now. Go back to the imperial capital and reflect on yourself. Hearing this, Han Xiangming's face instantly turned pale. His many years of hard work had all gone up in smoke. The gray-robed elder glanced at the river below and slowly clenched his right hand. Sword immortal. I never thought that I would be able to see a sword immortal in this life, but in such a way. After that he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. On the deck of the cloud ship, Han Xiangming bitterly smiled. Was I wrong? Beside Han Xiangming, the old man solemnly said. Miss, the affairs of the world are unpredictable. There's no need to blame yourself. Han Xiangming shook her head. If I had sincerely befriended him before with his potential and the people behind him, it would have been easy for me to enter the core of the Drunken Immortal restaurant in the future. Unfortunately, I was too calculative and missed the chance to change my fate and my family's fate. The old man slightly lowered his head and did not speak. Han Xiangming stood up and looked at the horizon. Fine, I'll take it as a lesson today. After that she turned around and left. Zhou Xian brought his sister Yiling back to their private room. It was the ordinary room. The two of them did not want to stay in a special room. Inside the room, Zhou Xian coaxed Yiling to sleep before entering the World Prison Pagoda. Just as he entered the World Prison Pagoda, he found that something was wrong. He found that the second floor had moved. Noticing this, Zhou Xian's expression changed. Just as he was about to speak, the mysterious woman's voice sounded again. Have you vented your anger? Zhou Xian bowed deeply. Many thanks for Senior's help. The mysterious woman coldly said. Help? Do you know why I helped? Zhou Xian shook his head. The mysterious woman said, do you remember what I asked you before? I asked you, do you know the consequences of that sword? Zhou Xian nodded. The mysterious woman said, at that time if you did not use that sword, I would not have helped you today. Zhou Xian was stunned. He did not understand. Why? If I did not use my sword, the matter would have been settled. Humph. The mysterious woman coldly said, settled? It's understandable to be sly, but if someone close to you is treated like that and you still think about the consequences, then what right does that person have to wield a sword? Moreover, if you did not use that sword, your heart would be sullen and your sword Dao heart would be shattered. You would never have the chance to become a powerful swordsman in this life. My sword heart would be shattered? Why? Yi Xian was puzzled. The mysterious woman said, swordsman, cultivates the sword but also the heart, and the heart is the true heart. At that moment you wanted to seek justice for your sister. You wanted to kill someone, but if you were worried about the consequences and went against your conscience, doing things in a roundabout way to settle this matter, you would also be going against your conscience. Of course, you might not feel that doing so would have any impact, but the truth is that your sword would be bound by yourself, and the sword heart that you had just achieved would also dissipate in an instant. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Senior, if swordsmen are all so stubborn, I'm afraid they won't live long. The mysterious woman said softly, this is the reason why there are so few swordsmen in this world, especially true sword immortals. There are even fewer of them. This is also what I've told you before, the path of the sword Dao is harder than you think. Yi Xian took a deep breath, now he could feel a little bit. At this time the mysterious woman said again, I can't do it, but do you know the consequences? Consequences? Yi Xian was stunned, subconsciously asked, what consequences? The mysterious woman said, I've told you before, the seal of this pagoda has been loosened, and my action this time affected the seal of every layer of this pagoda. To put it simply, those seals will be unlocked ahead of time, and to put it more simply, the seal of the second layer will be unlocked ahead of time. At most, in 4 to 5 months, the seal of the second layer will completely disappear. At that time, if you can't find the Dao law, you will die without a doubt. Don't even think about doing anything to me. If I help you deal with the existence on the second layer, then all the seals of this pagoda will loosen. At that time the consequences will be very severe. Besides that, I won't destroy the seals of this pagoda because of you. Understand? Yi Xian fell silent for a moment and then he said, Senior, can't you do it again? The mysterious woman said, at the very least, I can't do it again before you find the Dao law. It's even to the extent that I can't leave this pagoda again. Of course, even if I can, I won't do it again. To be honest, I only did it because you dared to draw your sword to seek justice for your younger sister. And it was also because I can't stand the sight of that fellow. Understand? Yi Xian nodded. I understand. He was very clearly aware that one had to rely on oneself, and he was very clearly aware that even if she'd helped him once, it didn't represent that she would help him a second time. Moreover, he didn't have the qualifications to make her help him a second time. It was already an enormous favor that she'd done him a single time. Yi Xian wasn't an ingrate and he wouldn't take it for granted that she helped him. Moreover, he wouldn't ask her to help him whenever he encountered trouble in the future. Being strong was the way to go. Thus, he didn't have any thoughts of relying on her. Conversely, the mysterious woman's final words allowed him to understand that he had to rely on himself for everything. It was unrealistic and foolish to pin one's hopes on others. But the problem with the seal. Dao laws. In order to search for Dao laws, he had to attain the qi-controlling realm as soon as possible, or even the ascendant realm. Because the mysterious woman said that he didn't have the strength to subdue a Dao law. It was a troublesome matter. Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. He was facing quite a lot of things right now. The most important was his younger sister's illness, and the second was the seal in the pagoda. He'd sensed that the pagoda was slightly abnormal, and he'd even sensed the seriousness in the mysterious woman's voice. He knew that she wasn't joking with him, and if the seal was loosened, then she would absolutely not help him. So he had to rely on himself to deal with this matter. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Senior, what's the clear sword heart? He hadn't forgotten that he'd entered an extremely profound state earlier. She fell silent for a moment before she said, the clear sword heart is like looking into a mirror. You usually don't know what you look like, but when you look into a mirror you'll clearly understand what you look like. The clear sword heart is the same principle. You're very clear about the direction of your path in the sword Dao, and you know what it looks like. To put it simply, you've clearly understood yourself and your sword Dao. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Is that useful? The mysterious woman said, you seem to have forgotten something. You executed life and death with a single strike, but your body doesn't seem to have suffered much backlash this time. Yi Xian was instantly stunned when he heard this. Yes. He'd executed life and death with a single strike, but his body wasn't in such a terrible state and he only felt slightly exhausted. The mysterious woman's voice resounded once more. The clear sword heart is a state of mind in the sword Tao. When you fight in the future, all illusions and illusions will be ineffective against you. Of course, if the enemy's strength surpasses yours by too much, then it'll be a different story. Besides that, your clear sword heart will be even more compatible with the sword, and you'll get twice the result with half the effort when executing sword techniques and sword moves. I'm tired, so I don't want to explain these trivial things to you. You'll understand once you spar with the shadow. Yi Xian was speechless. After a short while, Yi Xian went to spar with the shadow. When he executed the first strike, he was stunned. The feeling was truly different. Not only that, but when the shadow used the first strike, he was stunned again. This time the feeling was different. He couldn't explain why this feeling was, but if he had to say, he felt that this strike was very simple. After a quarter of an hour, Yi Xian stopped. And there was a sword in the chest of the shadow in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the shadow slowly dissipated. Yi Xian bowed his head slightly and remained silent. After a while he put away the Ling Shao sword. Looking at the Ling Shao sword in his hand, he was silent for a long time and then murmured softly, "Now I feel that this sword is mine." P.S. The new writing is very detailed and very serious, so it's very slow. If I really update 4 or 5 chapters a day, maybe you guys won't like reading it so much. Because in a situation where there are many chapters, there will definitely be mistakes. No one can write more than 10,000 words a day and still be meticulous. Of course, there will definitely be outbursts. Old readers know that I have a habit. In addition to stable updates and not being late, the other is outbursts. While I'm at it, I want tickets, recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, whatever you have. It's too important to the new book. Thank you everyone for your support. Chapter 25. Before this, Ling Shao sword was a little unfamiliar to him. That feeling was as if this sword wasn't his and it was rather jerky to use. But now that unfamiliar feeling was gone, but it wasn't very familiar either. However, it was much better than before, at least it didn't have that jerky feeling from before. At this moment he realized the importance of a sword's compatibility with its master. Putting away the sword, Yi Xian left the world prison pagoda and washed up. Sleep. Cultivation was important, but rest was equally important. No matter how much he wanted to become stronger, no matter how crazily he cultivated, he would rest every day. Because after resting he would be full of energy and be able to cultivate better. Outside. No one knew when the cloud ship had quietly started moving, as if everything had returned to normal. But the people on the cloud ship didn't forget that young man, nor did they forget the commotion outside the cloud ship. Everyone was curious about whether that young man was dead. He should be dead. After all, the people of the drunken immortal house weren't that easy to kill. The cloud ship flew over the vast river and came to an endless mountain range. Standing on the cloud ship and looking down, one could see tens of thousands of mountains. The scenery was too beautiful to behold. Many more people appeared on the deck of the cloud ship. All of them had calm expressions on their faces as if nothing had happened. Because the drunken immortal house had issued a warning, everyone had to keep what happened a secret, or else the drunken immortal house would be severely punished. No one dared to offend the drunken immortal house. In the room. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian felt a little itchy on his face. He slowly opened his eyes, and what entered his eyes was a pair of big and lively eyes. At this moment, Yi Ling was holding a small handful of her hair and gently scratching his face. Seeing that Yi Xian had woken up, Yi Ling smiled sweetly. "Brother." Yi Xian looked around and asked, "What time is it?" Yi Ling smiled. "Noon. Big brother slept in today. But it's okay, brother can continue to sleep, I'll watch brother." Yi Xian gently pinched Yi Ling's little nose and smiled. "Come, let's go out for some fresh air." After saying that, he got up and washed up, then brought Yi Ling to the deck of the cloud ship. When the brother and sister duo appeared on the deck of the cloud ship, everyone's gazes were focused on them. Not dead? Everyone's mind was filled with question marks. He actually didn't die after killing someone from the drunken immortal restaurant? On the other side, Lu Xiaoran took a deep look at Yi Xian and said softly, "This youth is not simple." Beside him, little Fatty ran up to Yi Xian and his sister. Little Fatty glanced at Yi Xian and knelt down on one knee. "Big brother, Please accept me as your disciple. Just name the price. My father is rich. Yi Xian was speechless. Yi Ling covered her little mouth as she giggled. Lu Xiaoran walked up to Yi Xian and his sister. He kicked the chubby boy and jokingly scolded, "Do you know how hard it is to become a swordsman?" Little Fatty looked at his head in dissatisfaction. "What's there to be afraid of? You can solve it with money." Lu Xiaoran's expression was rather awkward. He cupped his fists at Yi Xian and said, "I'm sorry for my poor discipline." Yi Xian smiled and looked at Little Fatty. "You want to become a swordsman?" Little Fatty hurriedly nodded. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Sure, but you have to lose weight first." Hearing that, Little Fatty's expression instantly turned bitter. Lose weight? That was worse than killing him. Seeing Little Fatty's expression, Yi Xian and Lu Xiaoran both laughed. At this time Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "Little friend Yi Xian, are you going to the capital this time?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Lu Xiaoran sized up Yi Xian and then asked, "Are you going to participate in Kuraki Academy's recruitment?" Yi Xian was slightly stunned. "How do you know, senior?" Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "The triennial recruitment of Kuraki Academy is considered the most lively event in country of Jiang. Little friend, you're so young and you're going to the capital. Moreover, Kuraki Academy is about to start recruiting, so you should be going to Kuraki Academy." As he spoke, he pointed at Little Fatty in front of him. "This is my son Lu Ming. This time, I'm bringing him to the capital in hopes of seeing if he can join Kuraki Academy." Little Fatty Lu Ming patted his chest. "Dad, don't worry. I'll definitely join Kuraki Academy. If they don't let me join, I'll buy Kuraki Academy." Yi Xian and his sister were speechless. Lu Xiaoran shook his head and sighed. "I shouldn't have spoiled you so much." Yi Xian nodded. The capital was the most prosperous place in country of Jiang. There were definitely crouching tigers and hidden dragons there. Little Fatty might be able to summon wind and rain in Thousand Mountain City, but if he was still so willful in the capital, he would probably suffer greatly. Lu Xiaoran turned to look at the distant horizon and said softly, "We're about to reach Two World City." Two World City? Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Lu Xiaoran explained, "Little friend, you might not know this, but Two World City is located at the border between country of Jiang and country of Tang in the north. The reason why country of Jiang and country of Tang have always been enemies and even at war is because of the competition for Two World City. Two World City's terrain is rather high and there are volcanoes on both sides. Can be said that whichever country obtains Two World City will have a natural advantage. Two World City has always belonged to either country of Tang or country of Jiang. Although it's a city of country of Jiang now, country of Tang thinks it's theirs. In short, it's very chaotic here." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Will we stop there?" Lu Xiaoran nodded. "The cloud ship needs to refuel, so we should stay there for half a day." Yi Xian said, "Senior Lu, are you afraid that something will happen?" Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "There shouldn't be anything wrong. It's just that it looks quite troublesome. Although country of Jiang is in charge of that place, country of Tang's people can come and go as they please. They can even openly provoke the city. So it's a long story." Yi Xian nodded and did not say anything. After chatting with Lu Xiaoran for a while, Yi Xian brought Yi Ling to the bow of the ship. Looking at the mountains and rivers below the ship, Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand. "One day I will ride my sword and look down on this world." As he spoke, he hurriedly asked in his heart, "Senior, can I ride my sword now?" "Yes," the mysterious woman said. Hearing this, Yi Xian was overjoyed. At this moment, the mysterious woman said, "You can do it in your dreams." Yi Xian was speechless. 2 hours later, the cloud ship sailed past the mountains and a city appeared before everyone's eyes. The city was located between two mountains. The entire city was like a gate between the two mountains. On the opposite side of the city was a plain, and at the end of the plain, a city could be vaguely seen. Over there was another country, the Tang Empire. At this moment, a voice sounded in everyone's ears. "Everyone, the cloud ship needs to refuel. We will stay in Two World City for 2 hours. After 2 hours, please board the ship immediately. Moreover, Two World City is quite chaotic. If there is no other need, try not to wander around." As the voice fell, the cloud ship trembled violently. Soon the cloud ship began to slowly descend. Trembling a little, Yi Ling held Yi Xian's arm tightly. As the cloud ship got closer and closer to the ground, Two World City became bigger and bigger in everyone's eyes. Standing on the cloud ship and looking down, Two World City was indeed much worse than Thousand Mountain City. The city was dilapidated and there were fewer people. It looked quite desolate. The cloud ship steadily stopped in the middle of a large river. In next to no time, countless people got off the cloud ship, and Yi Xian and his younger sister got off as well. However, they didn't go anywhere else, and they only rested at the resting area arranged by the Drunken Immortal Restaurant. The Drunken Immortal Restaurant arranged a square. The square was quite wide, close to the street and very close to the city gate. And in the square there were all kinds of food sold. Yi Xian walked to a noodle stall with his sister. Yi Xian shouted, "Boss, give me 2 bowls of noodles." The boss replied. Soon 2 bowls of steaming noodles were brought to Yi Xian and Yi Ling. Every night there would be an egg and some minced meat in the noodles. Yi Xian put the egg in his bowl into Yi Ling's bowl. Yi Ling rolled her eyes at Yi Xian, then returned the egg to Yi Xian. "Brother, don't tell me you don't like to eat eggs." "Humph, I won't fall for it." In the past, when the two of them depended on each other, Yi Xian would always lie to her, saying that he didn't like this or that, then give it to her. She believed him when she was young. Only later did she realize that it was not that her brother didn't like it, but that he couldn't bear to eat it. Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head, then smiled and said, "Boss, give us 2 more eggs." "Okay." On the other side, Han Xiaoming looked at the brother and sister in the distance. After a long time she said softly, "This kind of feeling has never appeared in the family." The old man beside Han Xiaoming shook his head. "This person values that little girl too much. In the future that little girl might become his weakness." Han Xiaoming looked at Yi Ling's bright face and said softly, "That girl is blessed." After saying that she turned and left. After a while Yi Xian and his sister were full. Yi Xian looked at the boss not far away. "Boss, the bill." The boss smiled and walked in front of Yi Xian. "Sir, for gold coins." Yi Xian, who was about to take out the money, was stunned. He thought that he had heard wrong and asked, "For gold coins?" The boss nodded, "4 gold coins." On the side, Yi Ling, who was drinking soup, was stunned. Her eyes were wide open. 4 gold coins? In Qingqing, a bowl of noodles was only 5 silver coins. Yi Xian and his sister looked at each other. Finally Yi Xian stood up. "Boss, 2 bowls of noodles, 2 eggs for gold coins? Or are you sure?" The boss's smile also disappeared. "What, sir, are you going to eat and dash?" Yi Xian said in a low voice. "Boss, you are running a scam." The boss said coldly, "We have been selling here for several years and we have always been selling at this price. How is this a scam? I think you don't want to pay." Yi Xian was about to speak when a voice suddenly came from the side. "Big brother, it's my treat." Yi Xian and his sister heard the voice. It was Lu Ming, and not far behind him was Lu Xiaoran. Lu Ming walked in front of the boss and he took out 4 gold coins and gave it to the boss. He said angrily, "This is my big brother. You think my big brother can't afford a bowl of noodles?" The boss glanced at Lu Ming, didn't say anything, kept the gold coins and turned to leave. Lu Ming turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. "Hello, big brother." Yi Xian was a little amused. This little fatty probably wanted to learn swordsmanship. At this moment, a sudden rush of horse hooves came from the distance in front of the city gate. Soon, under everyone's gaze, a dozen black armored cavalry suddenly rushed into the city. Tang Empire. Beside Yi Xian, Lu Xiaoran said in a low voice, "This should be the Tang Empire's black armored cavalry. Why are they here? Are they going to start a war?" Black armored cavalry. Yi Xian looked at the group of cavalry. After the cavalry rushed into the city, they galloped through the streets, killing people and robbing shops. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned. "No one cares." "Care about what?" On the side, the noodle shop owner sneered. "Those guards in the city are probably hiding in the basement now. Customers, let me give you a friendly reminder. Don't leave the Drunken Immortal Restaurant's territory. Otherwise it will be hard for you to survive." Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, the group of black armored cavalry suddenly rushed out of the city. There were some baggage on their backs as well as some crying women. "Ah!" The leader of the black armored cavalry laughed maniacally. "None of the men of Jiang country have balls. They're all trash." As he spoke, he began to tear off the clothes of a woman in front of him. In an instant, the woman was only left with her underwear. The surrounding people were filled with righteous indignation, but no one cared about it. Ah! The leader of the black armored cavalry laughed maniacally. Men of Jiang country, watch out for me. Not only will I rob your wealth, I will also sleep with your women. Ah! At this moment Zhou Xian suddenly turned to look at Zhou Xian. Senior, please take care of my sister. With that, Zhou Xian picked up the bench beside him and rushed out. The cavalryman's throat was pierced by a sharp piece of wood and he died on the spot. However, at this moment, several other cavalrymen had already rushed in front of him. Zhou Xian's expression became somewhat ferocious. He did not draw his sword but instead directly rushed out. Under the gazes of countless people, Zhou Xian shuttled through the group of cavalrymen. Soon, several cavalrymen fell to the ground one after another, all dead on the spot. In a short period of time, only the black armored cavalryman was left on the scene. These cavalrymen were experienced in battle, and their combat strength was naturally not ordinary. However, Zhou Xian was also experienced in battle, and he had experienced more battles than these cavalrymen combined. In addition, most of these cavalrymen were below the 5th grade unending realm. Therefore, these ordinary cavalrymen were naturally no match for him. Zhou Xian looked at the black armored cavalryman not far away. At this moment, the leading black armored cavalryman was somewhat panicking. He wanted to escape, but Zhou Xian's speed was even faster. He rushed out like a gust of wind. Sensing that Zhou Xian was rushing over, the black armored cavalryman knew that he could not escape. Immediately, his expression became ferocious. He turned around and stabbed at Zhou Xian with his spear. Change realm. Zhou Xian did not dodge the spear. Instead, he let the spear stab into his chest. Bang! Zhou Xian only took half a step back and the spear did not pierce through his body. Golden body realm. His physical body was much stronger than an ordinary person's physical body. The black armored cavalryman's expression changed greatly. Just as he was about to withdraw his spear, Zhou Xian took advantage of him and lifted his leg to sweep the black armored cavalryman's head. Bang! The black armored cavalryman's entire body slammed into a wall. Just as the black armored cavalryman was about to struggle to get up, Zhou Xian stepped on his chest. The black armored cavalryman looked at Zhou Xian with hatred. You're dead, you're dead. Just as Zhou Xian was about to make a move, a voice came from the side. Can you let me kill him? Zhou Xian turned his head and was somewhat surprised. The person who spoke was the woman he had saved earlier. The woman was about 18 or 19 years old. She had a delicate appearance and a good figure, but her expression was rather cold. Zhou Xian thought for a moment, then nodded. He pulled out the black armored cavalryman's saber and handed it to the woman. The woman glanced at Zhou Xian and took the saber. Just as she was about to make a move, an angry shout came from the side. Stop! Zhou Xian looked in the direction of the voice. A fat man hurried over with a group of soldiers. They were not soldiers of the Tang Empire, but soldiers of the Jiang Empire. To be more precise, they were soldiers of the Jiang Empire in Two World City. The fat man was the city lord of Two World City. The fat man led a group of people and rushed in front of Zhou Xian and the woman. He pointed at Zhou Xian angrily. Who allowed you to make a move? Zhou Xian frowned. The fat man looked at the woman angrily. Take her away. One of the soldiers rushed towards the woman. The woman subconsciously retreated behind Zhou Xian, but the soldier did not stop. At this moment Zhou Xian suddenly raised his hand and slapped him. Pop! The soldier was sent flying by Zhou Xian's slap. The fat man was stunned, then he said angrily, Are you trying to rebel? Zhou Xian slowly clenched his right hand. These soldiers of the Tang Empire entered the city to rape and pillage, but you didn't care. Now I want to kill them, but you came out to care. Why are you from the Tang Empire? The fat man said angrily, Do you know the consequences of killing them? The camp of the black armored cavalry is not far from the city. Killing them is equivalent to giving them an excuse to attack Two World City. This will cause more people to die, do you know that? Zhou Xian sneered. You're afraid that you'll die, right? The fat man's expression turned ugly. Don't talk so much nonsense. This is Two World City and I'm in charge here. You? Zhou Xian did not even look at him. Instead he turned to the woman. Go kill him. The woman glanced at Zhou Xian, then turned and walked towards the black armored cavalry on the ground. Seeing this, the fat man's expression changed. He said angrily, Take them down. At this moment Yi Xian grabbed the fat man's throat. The soldier who was taken down immediately stopped on the spot, not daring to move. Yi Xian stared at the fat man. I hate trash like you the most. You're tough on your own people but weak on the outside like dogs. If you dare to say another word I'll cut off your head. You. The fat man looked at Yi Xian with fear in his eyes. He did not dare to say another word. But just at this moment, a shrill cry sounded out. Everyone looked over and saw the woman holding a blade with both hands and stabbing it into the black armored cavalry's throat. Moreover, her face was covered in blood. After killing the black armored cavalry, the woman let go of the blade and leaned against the wall like a pile of mud. Her gaze was lifeless and no one knew what she was thinking. You've caused great trouble. The fat man pointed at Yi Xian while his entire body was trembling. Yi Xian did not pay any attention to the fat man. Instead he walked over to the woman. He did not say anything. He merely took out 10 gold coins and placed them in the woman's hand. Live well. With that he turned and left. The woman looked at Yi Xian's back in a daze. At this moment, a wave of hurried galloping sounds came from outside the city. This time it was not just a few but countless galloping sounds. The expressions of everyone in the city changed when they noticed this. This included Lu Xiaoran and the others who were not far away. The fat man glanced outside the city. The next moment his face turned pale. It's over. It's the black armored cavalry. They're here. They're here. With that he pointed at Yi Xian angrily. It's all your fault. You've harmed the entire city. It's you. Around them, some of the citizens in the city also looked at Yi Xian resentfully. Clearly they were blaming Yi Xian for being a busybody and bringing disaster upon himself. At this moment, the mysterious woman's voice rang in Yi Xian's mind. How do you feel when you've done something righteous and are treated this way? Yi Xian said calmly, whatever I do it's only to be worthy of my heart. It's not for others to see. How they view me is their business. The mysterious woman did not say anything. Yi Xian walked slowly towards the distant city gate. At this moment Yi Ling suddenly shouted, Brother. Yi Xian's body trembled slightly. He stopped and turned to glance at Yi Ling. He smiled and said, It's fine. Order another bowl of noodles for brother. Brother will be right back. With that said he turned and walked towards the city gate. Behind him Yi Ling watched as tears flowed from his eyes. Yi Xian walked outside the city gate. He had just walked outside the city gate when he suddenly stopped and turned around. Behind him the woman from before followed closely. She just followed him like that without saying a word. And at this moment the city gate suddenly closed. In front of the city gate stood a man and a woman. Facing them were thousands of black armored cavalry. Thousands of black armored cavalrymen charged at him together. Their momentum was so great that even Yi Xian was moved. He knew he couldn't beat them. He really couldn't beat them. Not to mention him. Even Xianxia, who was already at the levitation realm, was absolutely unable to resist the charge of thousands of black armored cavalry. He couldn't beat them but he still wanted to fight. Yi Xian didn't know why he had to fight but he just wanted to fight. My name is Ayu. Behind Yi Xian the woman suddenly said. Yi Xian nodded. My name is Yi Xian. Ayu glanced at Yi Xian. Yi Xian? I'll remember it. In my next life and the life after that I won't forget it either. Yi Xian didn't hear what the woman said because he was already walking towards the cavalry. Looking at the menacing cavalry, Yi Xian's gaze gradually became somewhat dazed. He didn't notice that within his body, Ling Xiao's sword was trembling violently. Afraid of death? Yi Xian was also afraid of death. However, there were many times and many things that he had to do even if he died. Yi Xian did not understand the affairs of the country, but he knew that Yi Xian was a citizen of the state of Jiang. The country had many shortcomings but this was his country. He was a citizen of the state of Jiang. No matter how bad the country was, it was still his home. No matter how bad his own country was, it was not the place for outsiders to insult it. Fight. This time he didn't do it for his sister, not for himself. Yi Xian quickened his pace. Looking at the menacing group of black armored cavalry, there was no fear in his eyes, only monstrous battle intent. Yi Xian suddenly laughed crazily. Come. Just as his voice fell, his body suddenly trembled slightly. In the next moment, an invisible force vibrated from within his body. What the hell? Within the prison pagoda, the mysterious woman's astonished voice suddenly sounded, battle intent? What the hell? A swordsman didn't comprehend sword intent, but instead comprehended battle intent. Did I teach a fake swordsman? Battle intent. Chapter 27. Realm. It was an illusory realm, but it truly existed. There were many realms in the world, such as sword intent, spear intent, fist intent, killing intent, battle intent, etc. Each realm was extremely difficult to comprehend, just like sword intent. In the entire Jiang country, there was only one Sword Dao Grandmaster, which meant that only one person in the Jiang country had comprehended sword intent. The reason why these realms were difficult to comprehend was because there was no exact cultivation method for them. Whether one could comprehend it or not depended on themselves. However, once they comprehended it, it would mean that their combat strength would greatly increase, and it would also mean that they had entered another level. At this moment, Xian had endless battle intent. This battle intent was not for himself, nor was it for his sister. As for why exactly, he could not explain it. All he knew was that he would not retreat even if there were tens of thousands of cavalrymen in front of him, let alone thousands of cavalrymen. Fight. Xian's footsteps became faster and faster, and wherever he passed, the battle intent swept up like a violent gale. Sand and dust flew up from the ground, forming a huge sandstorm around Xian. However, the momentum of the charge of thousands of black-armored cavalrymen was countless times more terrifying than Xian's. However, there was no fear in Xian's eyes. On the contrary, his speed became faster and faster. Behind Xian, Yu watched as the young man charged towards the black-armored cavalrymen in the distance. As she watched, her gaze became a little dazed. When Xian was still 100 feet away from the black-armored cavalrymen, the middle-aged man in the lead suddenly raised his right hand. In the next moment, thousands of black-armored cavalrymen stopped in their tracks. They stopped neatly without the slightest bit of disorder. The middle-aged man's gaze fell on 100 feet to the right of Xian, where a woman was slowly riding a horse. The woman wore a silver soft armor, her long hair was tied into a ponytail, and there was a golden scimitar hanging from her waist. She was not devastatingly beautiful, but her eyes were as sharp as knives. Just like that, she slowly rode her horse towards them, neither hurried nor slow. Silver armor, golden scimitar. The expressions of thousands of black-armored cavalrymen changed. In the entire Jiang country, there was only one person who wore silver armor and had a golden scimitar hanging from her waist. She was the 9th princess of the Jiang country, who was known as the Commander. He is also one of the most feared people in the Tang Empire. Not only the Tang Empire, but the surrounding countries were also afraid of him. The Jiang country's 9th princess and Xianxia were known as the Jiang country's two peerless geniuses. Both of them were legends. In front of the thousands of black-armored cavalrymen, the middle-aged man withdrew his gaze. He took a deep look at Xian, who was not far away, then turned around and disappeared into the distance with the thousands of black-armored cavalrymen. Came quickly and left quickly as well. Xian was stunned. Scared off by me? At the thought of this, Xian could not help but feel a little proud. Suddenly, the mysterious woman's voice rang out in his head. I suddenly realized that someone's skin is thicker than the earth. Xian. At this moment, the silver-armored woman arrived in front of Xian. She just stared at Xian. Xian was not stupid. He obviously knew that the reason why the cavalrymen retreated was probably because of this silver-armored woman. Xian sized up the silver-armored woman curiously. The silver-armored woman didn't have an unparalleled appearance like Xianxia, but she had a unique bearing, and he'd never seen such a bearing before. Especially those eyes, they were like sharp blades, and even he found it slightly difficult to resist those sharp eyes, and he didn't dare look straight at them. However, this feeling was fleeting. In this life only he Xian respected, and there was no one that he Xian feared. Xian met the silver-armored woman's gaze without fear. His gaze was different from the silver-armored woman's. The silver-armored woman's gaze was too sharp, too invasive, and it caused others to not dare look her in the eye. On the other hand, Xian's gaze was very calm, like a mountain that allowed a gentle breeze to blow by. The silver-armored woman withdrew her gaze. Follow me into the city. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked towards the city gate in the distance. Yi Xian shrugged and then he gazed at Ayu. Let's go. Ayu nodded lightly and then she followed closely by Yi Xian's side. Under the lead of the silver-armored woman, the three of them arrived before the tightly shut city gate. The silver-armored woman glanced at the city gate, and in the next moment, a few afterimages suddenly and mysteriously appeared before the city gate. In the blink of an eye, the city gate had shattered into pieces, and those afterimages had silently retreated to stand behind the silver-armored woman. Yi Xian's expression instantly became solemn when he saw this scene. What terrifying strength! Those people from before were at least at the skyward realm or above. Yi Xian glanced at the silver-armored woman once more, and his eyes were filled with curiosity. Who exactly is this woman? The silver-armored woman led Yi Xian and Ayu into the city. At this moment, the city lord and the soldiers of Two World City instantly charged over, and the fat city lord pointed angrily at the silver-armored woman. Who are you? You? As he spoke, his gaze descended onto the golden saber at the silver-armored woman's waist. The fat man was stunned when he saw the golden saber. In the next moment his entire body trembled violently. Under the astonished gazes of countless people, the fat man slowly knelt down and said with a trembling voice, "Greetings, Ninth Princess." Ninth Princess. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the surroundings was instantly petrified. Ninth Princess. The youngest commander in the history of Jiang Kingdom, and just like in Lanqiu, she was another legend of Jiang Kingdom. On the other side, Han Xiangming was stunned for a moment, and then she hurriedly led the old man towards the silver-armored woman. After being stunned for a moment, Lu Xiaoran hurriedly walked over to the silver-armored woman and bowed respectfully. Thousand Mountain City's city lord Lu Xiaoran greets Ninth Princess. The silver-armored woman glanced at Lu Xiaoran. City Lord Lu, although the Two World City is not under your jurisdiction, you are still a citizen of the Jiang country. This time the Tang Empire came to invade but you ignored it. You should be punished. I'll punish you with 5 years of salary, and you'll be fully responsible for the funeral of the people who died in the city. Lu Xiaoran bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to be punished. Han Xiangming walked over to the silver-armored woman and bowed slightly. Han Xiangming of the Immortal Intoxication in greets Ninth Princess. The silver-armored woman glanced indifferently at Han Xiangming. If you had stood up and said a few words to the people of this city earlier, I would have guaranteed that you would have a meteoric rise in the Immortal Intoxication Inn. Unfortunately, as a citizen of Jiang Kingdom, you don't have any thoughts about your country at all. What qualifications do you have to be a citizen of Jiang Kingdom? From this moment onwards, you are no longer a citizen of Jiang Kingdom. If the Immortal Intoxication Inn dares to let you manage the affairs of the Immortal Intoxication Inn, I will be the first to not forgive you. Hearing this, Han Xiangming's face instantly turned pale. Originally, she still had a little bit of hope, because the third pavilion master had actually given her a chance by asking her to return to the imperial capital. But now, the words of the woman in front of her had cut off all her possibilities. The Immortal Intoxication Inn would not become enemies with such a powerful person for her, because she was not worth it. The silver-armored woman turned to look at the city lord and the soldiers who were still kneeling not far away. The Tang Kingdom attacked, and the city lord of Two World City did not come out to fight. He allowed the people of the city to be slaughtered. This crime is unforgivable and he should be sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. As for the rest of the soldiers, they will be assigned to the suicide squad after their injuries have healed. In the future, if they perform meritorious service in the war with Tang Kingdom, today's crime can be pardoned. Take all of them away. Hearing this, the city lord of Two World City fainted. As soon as the silver-armored woman finished speaking, a few black-clothed figures silently appeared, and then the soldiers and the city lord were taken away. The silver-armored woman turned around, and her gaze descended onto Yi Xian. Earlier no one in the city dared to fight, but you dared. Why? Yi Xian looked the silver-armored woman in the eyes. Even though I'm not a citizen of Two World City, I'm a citizen of Jiang Kingdom. I couldn't bear to watch my fellow citizens being humiliated like this, so I made a move. The silver-armored woman nodded slightly, and there was a trace of admiration in her eyes. If all the men of Jiang Kingdom are like you, then a mere Tang Kingdom would be nothing. Join my army and be a general. How about it? Han Xiangming and Lu Xiaoran's expressions changed when they heard this. The ninth princess has taken a liking to Yi Xian. Moreover, he's a general as soon as he joins the army. Isn't this treatment a little too good? One had to know that a general could lead 100 soldiers. Join the army? Yi Xian was stunned and then he shook his head. Rejected. Lu Xiaoran wanted to say something but hesitated. One must know that once Yi Xian agrees, it means that Yi Xian has the ninth princess behind him in the future. This is a great opportunity. Han Xiangming was also a little surprised. However, when she remembered that Yi Xian has a sword immortal behind him, she felt relieved. Why would this guy care about a mere general? Seeing Yi Xian refuse, the silver-armored woman asked. You're not willing? Yi Xian nodded. I still have a lot of things to do, so I don't want to join the army at the moment. The ninth princess nodded. I won't force you. However, in consideration of your contributions today, I'll let you stay for the time being. If you're interested in the future, you can join my army anytime. With that, she turned around to leave. At this moment, Ayu suddenly knelt in front of the ninth princess. I'm willing to join the army. The ninth princess glanced at Ayu. Do you know the hardships of joining the army? Ayu clenched her fists. I'm not afraid. The ninth princess looked at Ayu for a long time and then nodded. Follow me. With that, she rode away on her horse. After Ayu stood up, she turned around and glanced at Yi Xian. Remember, my name is Ayu. With that, she turned around and quickly chased after the woman on the horse. Brother. At this moment, Yiling ran to Yi Xian's side and hugged Yi Xian's arm tightly, as if she was afraid that Yi Xian would disappear. Yi Xian gently patted Yiling's small hand and smiled. It's okay. Brother will be fine. With that, he looked at Lu Xiaoran. Senior Lu, is that the person just now the ninth princess of Jiang country? Lu Xiaoran nodded. That's her. Hearing this, Yi Xian turned his head and looked at the end of the street in the distance. The ninth princess. He had naturally heard of her. Together with Xianxia, they were known as the Jiang country's peerless duo. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian asked, Senior Lu, this city is an important place to me. Why didn't our country send a large number of troops to guard it? Beside Yi Xian, Lu Xiaoran said softly, previously our country and the Tang Empire signed a truce agreement. In order not to cause a greater conflict between the two countries, the higher-ups have not sent a large number of troops to guard here. Because once a large number of troops are sent here, it means that there might be a war. However, our country's weakness and concessions were exchanged for the Tang Empire's insatiable advances. Now that the ninth princess is here, I'm afraid that a war will soon come. Yi Xian had not experienced it, but he knew very well that if a war broke out, many people would die. If possible, it was better not to fight. An hour later, everyone boarded the cloud ship. The cloud ship started, and behind them, Two World City became smaller and smaller, and the imperial capital was getting closer and closer. Chapter 28. Life on the cloud boat was rather boring because there was no entertainment. Apart from playing with his younger sister Yiling, Yi Xian was cultivating crazily every day. Now that he possessed the battle intent, he could easily defeat the shadow when he fought against it. Battle intent. Yi Xian did not know much about the battle intent that he had just comprehended. He only knew that if he were to activate this battle intent while fighting against the shadow, his combat strength would be greatly enhanced. Moreover, he would become stronger as he fought. This made him rather excited and agitated. The only pity was that it was not sword intent. If it was sword intent, it would mean that he was not a quasi-sword Dao Grandmaster but a true sword Dao Grandmaster. Although he had comprehended battle intent, he could not be called a martial Dao Grandmaster. That was because he did not know much about the path of martial Dao Yi. Be it sword intent or battle intent, they were a symbol of a martial Dao Grandmaster and a sword Dao Grandmaster. However, it did not mean that one would be a martial Dao Grandmaster or a sword Dao Grandmaster after comprehending the battle intent and sword intent. There were many things that needed to be done. At this moment he could only say that he had comprehended concepts that he should not have comprehended, and he had to go through the process in between. Of course, it was only a matter of time before he became a martial Dao Grandmaster. In other words, as long as he reached the Qi-controlling realm and could control Qi, he would be a martial Dao Grandmaster to a certain extent. As for how valuable it would depend on his understanding of martial Dao. No matter what, he was already satisfied this time. His sword heart was clear and he had battle intent. What he wanted to do the most now was to fight Xianxia, who was dressed in white as snow. You're not a match for that woman right now. The mysterious woman seemed to know what Zhou Xian was thinking and said, when that woman fought you previously, not only did she suppress her cultivation level, but she also suppressed some of her special abilities. In short, she's barely passable. Barely. Zhou Xian's expression was rather strange. Senior, is she barely passable in your eyes? The mysterious woman said indifferently, in my eyes she's barely passable, but it's enough for her to look down on countless geniuses below the clouds. Zhou Xian asked curiously, Senior, were you very powerful in the past? The mysterious woman said, guess. Zhou Xian was speechless. The mysterious woman continued, Kid, seeing that you're so good to your sister, I'll give you a few words for free. In this world, talent and physique are all fleeting clouds. Since ancient times, there had been many people who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the gods with their mortal bodies. The martial Dao, the sword Dao, and the myriad of Daos in this world have no end. Being talented and having a good physique will at most give you a slight advantage and allow you to walk further. However, whether or not you can continue walking on this path depends more on a person's perseverance and character. Zhou Xian was silent. Perseverance? Temperament? He understood the former. He had relied on perseverance to survive until now with his sister. As for temperament, he didn't fully understand it. However, to him he didn't care about right or wrong when he did things. He only cared about his heart. If you think it's right, do it. If you think it's wrong, don't do it. Nothing in this world goes as one wishes. It's enough to have a clear conscience. The mysterious woman's voice sounded again. Now that you've comprehended battle will, you can learn more about the martial Dao. Don't waste this battle will. As for the martial Dao Yi, you can explore and learn it yourself. Zhou Xian was taken aback. Then he hurriedly said, Senior, don't you understand the martial Dao? The mysterious woman said, It's not that I don't understand it, but I understand it too well. In the future, whether it's the sword Dao or the martial Dao, you need to explore and study it yourself. The only thing I can do for you is to guide you in the dark. When she spoke up to hear, she paused for a moment and then she said, The path that others have taken isn't your path, and don't try to imitate the path of others. Only the path that you've taken and the things that you've comprehended are truly yours. Just like the battle will, your previous choice allowed you to comprehend the battle will. But if I told you to do it, you wouldn't be able to comprehend the battle will. Most of the time, doing it on purpose will only backfire. Alas, I really don't want to explain these trivial things to you. Hurry up and join that whatever academy so that you don't have to bother me. Zhou Xian was speechless. Zhou Xian didn't disturb the mysterious woman because he understood what she meant. It was like climbing a mountain. Others said that climbing a mountain was tiring and difficult, but you wouldn't feel that way. Only when you tried it yourself would you realize where it was tiring and where it was difficult. It was the same for the martial Dao and the sword Dao. Only when he tried it himself would he deeply understand where it was difficult and where it was tiring. 2 hours later, Zhou Xian left the prison pagoda. As soon as he left the prison pagoda, little fatty Lu Ming came to his and Yi Ling's room. Ever since Zhou Xian displayed his invincible might in Two World City, little fatty Lu Ming's worship of Zhou Xian had become a little crazy. He himself worshipped swordsmen. In addition, Zhou Xian had stood out at that time. Zhou Xian's image in the little fatty's eyes suddenly became great. Worship. Unparalleled worship. Little fatty was also very familiar with them. After entering the room, he carried a pile of fruits and placed them on the table in front of Zhou Xian and his sister. Then he smiled and said, Big brother, sisterling, eat, it's delicious. Zhou Xian and his sister looked at each other and smiled. At this time, Lu Xiaoren walked into the room. Lu Xiaoren cupped his fists at Zhou Xian and said with a smile, I hope I'm not disturbing you? Zhou Xian smiled and said, Of course not. Senior Lu, please sit. Lu Xiaoren sat down and the two little fellows sensibly retreated to the side. Lu Xiaoren said, We'll reach the imperial capital in half a day. Little friend, do you know anyone in the imperial capital? Zhou Xian shook his head. This time he didn't know anyone in the imperial capital. Lu Xiaoren smiled slightly. The imperial capital is a mix of good and bad people. If you don't mind, you can stay in the accommodation I've arranged for you. After you enter Kuraki College, you can choose whether you want to stay or leave. What do you think? Zhou Xian thought for a while and then nodded. Then I'll have to trouble you. He naturally wouldn't refuse Lu Xiaoran's kindness. As the saying goes, one more friend is one more path. Since the other party was so kind, why should he refuse? Seeing that Yi Xian agreed, Lu Xiaoran's smile on his face became even wider. He was the lord of a city and naturally had great power. The reason why he befriended Yi Xian was naturally because he valued Yi Xian's potential. Lu Xiaoran didn't stay for long and soon left with little fatty. Only Yi Xian and Yi Ling were left in the room. Yi Ling sat next to Yi Xian and said softly, "Brother, did you agree to be a general because of me?" Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling. Yi Ling said softly, "I asked little fatty. He said that a general is a very high official. It's an official. Brother, why are you so stupid? Why did you refuse?" Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "What will you do if I become a general?" Yi Ling looked straight at Yi Xian. "I'm your burden, right?" Yi Xian shook his head. "You're the most important person in my life. For you, I can do anything and I can give up anything." As he spoke, he held Yi Ling's little hand tightly. "Without you, even if I become a sword immortal, it's meaningless." Yi Ling's tears suddenly flowed down. She didn't say anything and just hugged Yi Xian tightly. After a while, Yi Ling felt sleepy and fell asleep. Greedy for sleep. Looking at Yi Ling on the bed, Yi Xian's face was as gloomy as still water. Yi Ling was even more greedy for sleep than before. Fortunately, with the celestial fire warmth jade, she wasn't that cold. However, her situation wasn't good because her face was getting paler. Although she usually didn't say anything, Yi Xian knew very well that she just didn't want him to worry. Yi Xian gently covered Yi Ling with a blanket and left the room to go to the deck of the cloud ship. At the bow of the ship, he looked up into the distance. It was almost dusk and the sky was fiery red like a huge fire cloth. Under the setting sun there were thousands of mountains. They were almost at the imperial capital. "Little friend." At this moment Lu Xiaoran's voice sounded in his ears. Yi Xian turned his head and Lu Xiaoran walked to his side. Lu Xiaoran said with a smile, "Looking at you, little friend, you seem to be in a hurry to get to the imperial capital." Yi Xian nodded. "Senior, can you tell me more about Kuraki College?" Lu Xiaoran nodded his head. Kuraki Academy is not a power of the Jiang country, just like the Drunken Immortal restaurant. They are spread throughout the various countries, and the reason why they are so popular, other than having extremely powerful teachers and various cultivation resources, there is another reason, and that is because of their status. As long as you enter Kuraki College, it's equivalent to being labeled as a genius. In the future you'll be recruited by various forces. As he spoke, he smiled. Those who come from Kuraki College will be able to eat well no matter where they go. They might even be recruited by the imperial family. To the disciples of poor families, this is the shortest path to success. To the disciples of the imperial family and the aristocratic families, the identity of a student of Kuraki College is a form of protection. Moreover, entering Kuraki College allows them to make friends with many geniuses. After all, in the imperial capital, connections are the most important. Yi Xian nodded slightly and as if he thought of something he asked, "Is Kingdom Scholar and Lanxiu also from Kuraki College?" Lu Xiaoran shook his head, "And Guosher isn't from Kuraki College." Yi Xian was slightly astonished. "Why?" Lu Xiaoran smiled. "The dean of Kuraki College personally looked for Guosher, hoping that she would join Kuraki College. However, I heard that she refused." "Refused?" Yi Xian was stunned. "Why?" Lu Xiaoran shook his head and smiled. "Because there's no mentor in Kuraki College that can teach her. It should be said that she's already qualified to be a mentor. Tell me, isn't it a little ridiculous to ask her to join Kuraki College?" Yi Xian was speechless. Lu Xiaoran continued, "However, although she didn't join Kuraki College still gave her the honor of being an honorary mentor. Although she doesn't have any real power, other than the dean and a few core members of Kuraki College, everyone else has to pay their respects when they see her." At this point he paused slightly. "As far as I know, Guosher's background isn't simple. However, this isn't something that we should care about." Yi Xian nodded, then asked, "Senior, I heard that Kuraki College has the best doctors, is that right?" Lu Xiaoran nodded. "I don't dare say that they have the best, but their treatment methods should be the best in Jiang country. Even the imperial physicians in the palace often go there to ask for advice, and some of the imperial physicians are even from there." Hearing this, Yi Xian's heart relaxed. He turned his head to look into the distance, and at the end of his line of sight he could vaguely see a majestic ancient city, the imperial capital. Chapter 29. The imperial capital was the center of power in the state of Jiang, and it was the most prosperous place in the state of Jiang. Moreover, it was the place where countless young people chased after their dreams. The cloud vessel grew closer and closer to the imperial capital, and the city grew clearer and clearer within their fields of vision. Lu Xiaoran, who stood by Yi Xian's side, suddenly said, "Young brother Yi Xian, the imperial capital is filled with all sorts of people, so you have to be more tactful. Otherwise there might be a lot of trouble." Yi Xian nodded. "I won't cause trouble." Lu Xiaoran shook his head and smiled. "I'm not afraid of you causing trouble, but this place is filled with all sorts of people. Even if I'm the governor of a city, I have to be careful here because I'm deeply afraid of offending someone I shouldn't." As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian and said, "Young brother Yi Xian, it's not enough to not cause trouble here. If it's possible, then make friends with more people. It'll be extremely beneficial to you." Make friends. Yi Xian nodded. He naturally understood the benefits of having more friends. The cloud vessel grew closer and closer to the imperial capital, and they were able to clearly see the appearance of the imperial capital from their current location. The imperial capital wasn't very large, and it had a population of around 1 million. Moreover, the city was very ancient. Obviously, it had a certain amount of history. However, it was extremely prosperous. They hadn't even approached the imperial capital when countless cloud vessels were entering and exiting the imperial capital from the surroundings. Yi Xian gazed at the scene in the sky and said in a light voice, "How bustling." Lu Xiaoran smiled. "It'll be even more bustling once we enter." Yi Xian nodded. He was also a little curious about the imperial city in front of him. The cloud vessel suddenly stopped when it was around 3 kilometers away from the imperial capital, and then it descended slowly. There was an enormous river beneath the cloud vessel, and there were at least a few dozen cloud vessels parked there. It was a magnificent scene. Meanwhile, a voice resounded, "We've arrived at the imperial capital. Passengers, please prepare to disembark." Yi Xian turned around and returned to his room. When he noticed that Yi Ling was still asleep, he didn't wake her up and he just carried her on his back and arrived on the deck. Glancing at Yi Xian, Lu Xiaoran said with a smile, "Yi Xian, my young friend, let's go to my mansion first." Yi Xian nodded. "Then I'll be troubling you." Fatty Lu Ming immediately beamed when he heard Yi Xian's words. Because he had come to the imperial city alone, he was already bored. Now that he had 2 companions, he was naturally happy. The cloud ship slowly descended. Soon the cloud ship steadily stopped on the river. A long ladder was erected at the edge of the cloud ship. Countless people walked down from the cloud ship. Yi Xian carried Yi Xian Yi Ling on his back and followed Lu Xiaoran towards the city gates of Yi Xian. On the cloud ship, Han Xiangming looked at Yi Xian's back and said softly, "I'm afraid Kuraki Academy won't be peaceful anymore." An old man beside Han Xiangmeng asked, "Young miss, why aren't you befriending him?" Han Xiangmeng shook her head. "I've already missed the best opportunity. If I try to befriend him now, I'll only be humiliating myself." As she spoke, she raised her head and looked at the imperial capital. "Only by joining Kuraki Academy will I have a sliver of hope." At the gates of the imperial capital, Yi Xian looked at the city gates and sighed. Only now did he realize how small Qingqing was. The gates of Qingqing weren't even 1/10 the size of this city gates. This was a real city. Qingqing couldn't even be considered a city. After entering the city gates, Yi Xian's first impression was that it was huge. The road beneath his feet was at least 60 feet wide, and the surrounding buildings were arranged in a picturesque manner. There wasn't the slightest sense of blockage and it was extremely comfortable to look at. The second impression was that it was bustling. The city was bustling with people, and if one spoke softly, it would be hard to hear them. At this moment, Yi Ling woke up as well. Yi Ling looked around in amazement. "Brother, this place is much livelier than our Qingqing." Yi Xian smiled, then looked at Lu Xiaoran. "Senior Lu, where's Kuraki Academy?" Lu Xiaoran smiled. "Little friend, don't be anxious. There are still 10 days before Kuraki Academy starts to recruit students. At this stage, Kuraki Academy isn't open to the public, so there's no point in you going now. Why don't you stay in my residence first, then rest for a few days? When you're ready you can go to Kuraki Academy with my son. What do you think? Yi Xian nodded. Of course. Under Lu Xiaoran's guidance, the group arrived at a large and luxurious residence. This was normal since Lu Xiaoran was the lord of a city. Lu Xiaoran arranged a courtyard for Yi Xian and his sister, and even arranged for 3 maids. This made Yi Xian feel a little embarrassed. After entering the courtyard less than half an hour later, Yi Ling fell asleep again. Yi Xian's heart instantly sank when he saw this scene. There were 24 hours in a day, yet Yi Ling might be sleeping for 18 hours. This was surely unusual. After he covered Yi Ling with a blanket, Yi Xian left the room and arrived at the courtyard. 10 days. Kuraki Academy was where his hope lay now. However, he was still slightly worried because he hadn't attained the Qi-controlling realm yet, and the lowest requirement for Kuraki Academy to recruit students was the Qi-controlling realm. He seemed to have thought of something and withdrew a white jade pendant. This was something Xianxia had given him, and if it really didn't work then he could only use this jade pendant. Even though he really wanted to rely on his own strength to enter Kuraki Academy. The spirit sword. Yi Xian knew that he had to start dealing with spirit swords once he entered Kuraki Academy. He was unlike others, and if he wanted to improve his cultivation, then he could only rely on devouring spirit swords. But how precious were spirit swords? Even if they existed, how expensive would they be? With his current net worth, he probably couldn't even afford a single strand of hair. Only now did he deeply understand how difficult it was for an ordinary person to cultivate. Yi Xian entered the prison pagoda. He didn't spar with the shadow because the shadow was no longer a match for him. What he needed to do now was to truly grasp battle intent. He hadn't completely grasped this illusory battle intent. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, there were less than 2 days left until Kuraki Academy's recruitment. In the prison pagoda, Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly, and on his fists, a shapeless force vibrated ceaselessly. Battle intent. The current him didn't need to rely on a sword to determine life and death to be able to contend with a higher realm powerhouse. Now he could rely on this battle intent alone to contend with a higher realm powerhouse. However, he didn't know if he could win. The only pity was that he didn't comprehend sword intent. Otherwise, he really wouldn't feel any pressure when facing a higher realm powerhouse. An hour later, Yi Xian left the prison pagoda because Lu Xiaoran had arrived at their courtyard. When he saw Yi Xian, Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "Young friend, have you gotten used to living here recently?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "To be honest, my younger sister and I have never lived in such a good place." Lu Xiaoran roared with laughter. "Young friend, you really know how to joke. Right, there's a banquet tonight. If you have the time, you can bring your younger sister along with me." "A banquet?" Yi Xian was stunned and then he asked, "What banquet?" Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "A banquet hosted by the first prince of the imperial capital. Every time Kuraki Academy recruits, geniuses from all over the Jiang Kingdom will come to the imperial capital. The Jiang Kingdom's imperial family naturally doesn't look down on these geniuses. So, His Majesty the King will send a prince to receive these geniuses on his behalf." Yi Xian pondered deeply for a moment and then he said, "It shouldn't be something that just anyone can attend, right?" Lu Xiaoran nodded. "Of course. Only those with status and strength are qualified to attend this banquet. Or perhaps, it should be said that those who are able to attend this banquet have a 100% chance of entering Kuraki Academy. Otherwise, the higher-ups wouldn't invite them." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Senior, I didn't receive an invitation." Lu Xiaoran said seriously, "Young friend, you can go with me. As for the invitation, I'll invite you. If it's possible, it's better to go. All the geniuses of this year are monstrous geniuses, and it'll be beneficial to you if you're able to make friends with some of them. What do you think?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he nodded. Just as Lu Xiaoran had said, it wasn't bad to make friends with some people. After all, a swordsman didn't have to be alone. Moreover, he wanted to see the monstrous geniuses of the Jiang Kingdom. Lu Xiaoran nodded and smiled. "Then please prepare yourself. We'll set out in a moment." After saying that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian returned to his room. At this time, Yi Ling had also woken up. Yi Xian walked to Yi Ling and gently rubbed Yi Ling's cheek. He said softly, "Don't sleep later. Big brother will take you to eat and drink to your heart's content." Yi Ling blinked and then smiled brightly. All right. Yi Xian lightly scratched Yi Ling's little nose. Quickly go wash your face. We'll set out immediately. Half an hour later, Lu Xiaoran left the mansion with Yi Xian, Yi Ling and a group of people. Soon they arrived at a restaurant in the center of the city. The Immortal Inn. The Immortal Inn could be said to be the largest restaurant in the imperial city. It covered an area of nearly 1,000 square meters. It had a total of 6 floors and its exterior was covered in gold. It was extremely luxurious. And this restaurant was the property of the drunken Immortal Inn. Yi Xian and his younger sister were both struck dumb by the sight of the restaurant. They had never seen such a large and luxurious restaurant before. Not to mention them, even little fatty Lu Ming was a little shocked. There wasn't such a large restaurant in Thousand Mountain City. Seeing the three's expressions, Lu Xiaoran laughed. This isn't the biggest. In the future you should go out and see more. You'll realize that the world is big and full of wonders. Yi Xian nodded. He deeply agreed with this point. Fortunately, he left Qing City. Otherwise, he would be a frog in a well for the rest of his life. Lu Xiaoran led the three into the Immortal Inn. A beautiful woman immediately came to greet them. Are you City Lord Lu? Lu Xiaoran nodded. The woman smiled sweetly. There's still half an hour before the banquet. The Crown Prince has already arranged some entertainment for City Lord Lu. Would City Lord Lu like to try it? Hearing this, Lu Xiaoran's old face turned slightly red. He hurriedly shook his head. No need. Bring me to see the Crown Prince. The woman nodded and led Lu Xiaoran and Yi Xian up the stairs. When they reached the 4th floor, Yi Xian and Yi Ling were stunned by the scene in front of them. The 4th floor was like a public square. It was very big, bigger than the entire Yi clan. It was extremely luxurious inside. It was resplendent in gold and jade. It was like a palace. Even the feet were paved with a thick layer of animal skin. It was very soft. It was extremely comfortable. Wow! At the side, little fatty Lu Ming suddenly stepped on the beast skin under his feet and exclaimed, Dad, this is the beast skin of the scarlet tiger. This beast skin costs at least several hundred gold coins and there are at least tens of thousands of them here. Damn it, this drunken immortal restaurant is richer than our family. Hearing this, Yi Xian and Yi Ling looked at each other. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Poverty has limited my imagination. Lu Xiaoran smiled. Young friend, this drunken immortal inn is as rich as a country. Even the royal family isn't as rich as them. As he spoke, he glanced into the distance and said, Young friend, please wait for a moment. I'll be back soon. After that, he quickly walked into the distance. At this moment, a young man walked over. The young man cupped his fists at Yi Xian. Brother, you've just arrived, right? Yi Xian nodded and cupped his fists in return. Just arrived. The young man smiled. I'm Yu Bu, the heir of the Yu family from River City. May I know who you are? Yi Xian smiled. I'm Yi Xian from Qingcheng. I'm an independent cultivator. An independent cultivator? The young man was slightly stunned. After that, he sized up Yi Xian and asked, You're an independent cultivator? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The young man's expression turned cold. Sorry for disturbing you. After that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian was speechless. The young man walked to the side and cupped his fists at one of the men. I'm Yu Bu, the heir of the Yu family from River City. Brother, you are? The man cupped his fists in return. I'm Mo Shao, the heir of the Mo family from Yu City. Hearing this, the young man was shocked. You mean the Mo family that owns dozens of gold mines? The man nodded. That's right. The young man pulled the man's arm and smiled. Brother Mo, we feel like old friends at first sight. Come, let's drink a few cups. P.S. Thank you to all the friends who have tipped and voted. During the new book period, every ticket is precious. Thank you for your support. Thank you sincerely. Pour tea for the big shots. Chapter 30. Yi Xian and Yi Ling were instantly stunned by this scene. A short moment later, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. It's still a familiar feeling. Actually, it was the same in Qing City. Only those who were valuable would be made friends with. Moreover, those who were valuable would only make friends with those who were valuable. Lu Ming, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke angrily. Big brother, this fellow is a snob. Do you want me to stand up for you? Yi Xian glanced at the little fatty and then he shook his head and smiled. Birds of a feather flock together. It's very normal. The little fatty was about to say something when Lu Xiaoran walked over, and there was a man in a yellow robe standing before him. The man was around the age of 25 or 26, had a handsome appearance, and carried a faint dignified aura between his brows. The man walked over to Yi Xian and then he sized Yi Xian up and smiled. "This is brother Yi Xian." Yi Xian looked at Lu Xiaoran and the latter hurriedly said, "My young friend Yi Xian, this is the eldest prince of our Jiang kingdom, Jiang Yanxing." The eldest prince. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he cupped his fists to the eldest prince, Yi Xian of Qing City. He was neither servile nor overbearing. The eldest prince nodded and smiled. "Since City Governor Lu thinks highly of brother Yi Xian, then we naturally have to get closer to him in the future." Yi Xian was about to speak when a slightly excited voice suddenly resounded, "Mo Sui Qing is here." Mo Sui Qing. When they heard this voice, everyone instantly looked towards the staircase. The first prince who was in front of Yi Xian also looked toward the staircase. He tidied up his clothes and walked over. Seeing this scene, Lu Xiaoran wanted to say something, but in the end he did not say anything. Naturally, he was on the first prince's side and this time he wanted to introduce Yi Xian to the first prince. In order to not arouse Yi Xian's disgust, he did not reveal too much about Yi Xian. Now that he saw the first prince's indifferent expression, he wanted to say a few more words. However, when he remembered that Yi Xian was a swordsman, he did not say anything. It would be fine if the referral failed, but if it caused Yi Xian's disgust, then the loss would outweigh the gain. Under everyone's gaze, a woman walked up the stairs. The woman was around the age of 20 and she wore a fiery red dress. Her figure was tall and extremely slender, and her appearance was extremely exquisite. She had beautiful brows and starry eyes, and her face was fair and delicate. Especially her eyes, they were large like the stars in the night sky, and a single glance at them seemed to be able to cause one to fall into them. She was very beautiful. Even Yi Xian took a few more glances at her. He wouldn't reject beautiful things, but it was just pure appreciation. As for other thoughts, he didn't have any. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze and looked at Lu Xiaoran. "Senior, this is?" Lu Xiaoran smiled. "Mo Sui Qing, the number one beauty in the imperial capital." The number one beauty in the imperial capital. Yi Xian was stunned and then he said instinctively, "Where's in Lanxiu?" Even though the woman before him was drop-dead gorgeous, it would be going too far to say that she surpassed in Lanxiu. Lu Xiaoran smiled. "And Guosher isn't renowned in the 100 Kingdoms by relying on her appearance, and the impression others have towards her isn't based on her appearance as well. Young friend, do you understand?" Yi Xian came to an understanding when he heard this. As soon as Mo Sui Qing arrived, the gazes of everyone here converged onto her, and they surrounded her like a host of stars surrounding a bright moon. Lu Xiaoran, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke abruptly. "Mo Sui Qing isn't just beautiful, she's from the Mo clan. It's an ancient clan that even the imperial family fears. Presently, the two princes of the kingdom of Jiang are fighting for the position of crown prince, so if one of them is able to marry her, then the position of crown prince would be practically secured. Unfortunately, Mo Sui Qing's standards are extraordinarily high. She once said that no man in the kingdom of Jiang is worthy of her." Meanwhile, Yi Ling, who stood by Yi Xian's side, spoke abruptly. "I think my older brother can do it." Yi Xian rolled his eyes at Yi Ling. "Big brother is only a treasure in your heart, but I'm probably nothing in the eyes of others." Yi Ling smiled sweetly and held tightly onto Yi Xian's arm. In her heart, her older brother was worthy of anyone in the world. Lu Xiaoran roared with laughter. "Don't belittle yourself. You're young and promising, so anything is possible if you have the heart." He didn't know who was behind Yi Xian, but he knew something about Dao Yi. Yi Xian had killed an elder of the immortal indulgence in and survived. After that, Tower Master Han had died. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He glanced at Mo Sui Qing, who stood in the distance. Women like her were arrogant and had extremely high standards, so he wouldn't go looking for trouble with her. In his opinion, the relationship between two people should be based on feelings and character. Even though talent and potential were necessary, it would be meaningless if a relationship was built on talent and potential, as well as family background. It was like saying that you only love me if I have money, and you don't love me if I don't have money. What was the point of such love? The banquet started. Yi Xian and his sister Yi Ling, Lu Xiaoran and little Fatty sat at a table alone. The table was filled with all kinds of dishes and there was an endless stream of them. The siblings and little fatty ate happily. He and his sister were used to a hard life, so they had never eaten delicacies before. As for little fatty, he was just a glutton. The people around them were either making friends or toasting each other. Only their table was eating crazily. Seeing this, Zhou Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly. However, he couldn't do anything about it. He knew better than anyone what kind of person his son was. If he asked little fatty to say those hypocritical words, little fatty wouldn't be able to do it. He might even offend people. As for Xian, in his heart Xian should have extremely high standards and disdain to make friends with others. In fact, he didn't know that every time Xian said that he was a rogue cultivator, people would run away. Xian was helpless. Damn it, I have to ask what your family does before I make friends. Isn't that stupid? A moment later, Zhou Xian turned to look into the distance and said, "You guys eat first. A few old acquaintances have arrived. I'll go greet them." Xian and the others didn't respond. Zhou Xian shook his head with a smile and left. Yiling put a large drumstick in Xian's bowl. "Brother, you should eat more." As she spoke, she put a cabbage in little fatty's bowl. "Little fatty, you have to lose weight. Vegetables are delicious, eat more." Little fatty glanced at the vegetables in his bowl and said bitterly, "Sisterling, you're too biased." Hearing this, Yiling smiled and put a piece of braised pork in Xian's bowl. "Brother, this is delicious. It's so tender." Little fatty was speechless. When I return, I must ask my mother to give me a younger sister." Xian and his sister exchanged glances. In the next moment, the siblings laughed. On the other side, a veiled woman appeared beside Mo Suiqing. That woman was Han Xiangming, who had just arrived. Although Han Xiangming was talking to Mo Suiqing, her gaze would occasionally fall on Xian. She hadn't expected Xian to appear here. Sensing Han Xiangming's gaze, Mo Suiqing glanced at Xian. "Xiangming, you know that person?" Han Xiangming nodded. Mo Suiqing smiled. "He's not simple for you to pay so much attention to him. Tell me, which family's young master is he from?" Han Xiangming shook her head. "I've only met him once or twice. I'm not very familiar with him." Mo Suiqing's lips curled into a fox-like smile. "You're not very familiar with him, but you've seen him several times. Why, have you fallen for him?" As she spoke, she glanced at Xian. "His looks are not bad. His eyesight is passable." Han Xiangming shook her head. "Don't spout nonsense. I've only met him twice. I just didn't expect him to appear here." Mo Suiqing looked around and smiled. "There's nothing strange about him appearing here. There are geniuses from various cities in the country of Jiang here. There are endless benefits to befriending people here. In this society, apart from strength, connections are also important, isn't that so?" Han Xiangming said indifferently, "Did you see who he befriended?" Mo Suiqing was slightly stunned. She glanced at Xian again and said in surprise, "If you put it that way, he's a little special." Han Xiangming shook her head. "Let's not talk about him. His matters have nothing to do with us." Mo Suiqing shook her head. "I'm a little interested. Let's go and take a look." Han Xiangming's expression changed slightly. She quickly said, "Suiqing, don't provoke him." "He, provoke?" Mo Suiqing smiled. "Your words are a little strange. I can see that you're a little afraid of him. What's going on?" Just as Han Xiangming was about to speak, Mo Suiqing suddenly said, "Forget it. He's making me even more curious. Let's go and take a look." After speaking, she pulled Han Xiangming to Xian's table. Mo Suiqing and Han Xiangming's actions naturally attracted the attention of countless people. Seeing the two women walk to Xian's table, everyone looked at Xian. Curious. They were naturally curious about Xian's identity. There weren't many people who could catch Mo Suiqing's attention. Mo Suiqing sized up Xian and smiled. "There's no one here. You don't mind us sitting here, right?" Xian glanced at the two women. He naturally knew Han Xiangming. However, he didn't understand what they were up to. Before Xian could reply, Mo Suiqing pulled Han Xiangming to sit down. She sized up Xian and asked, "Young master, how should I address you? Which family are you from?" Xian put down his chopsticks and cupped his fists. "Xian, a wandering cultivator." "A wandering cultivator?" Mo Suiqing's interest grew. Just a wandering cultivator? Yi Xian nodded. Just a wandering cultivator. Mo Suiqing smiled. A wandering cultivator doesn't have the right to be here. Yi Xian smiled. We're just here to freeload with City Lord Lu. Freeload. Hearing Yi Xian's words, everyone burst into laughter. Mo Suiqing started laughing as well. It's the first time I've seen someone come here to freeload. Yi Xian pondered deeply for a moment and said, Miss Emma, what do you want? Just get straight to the point. The gazes of everyone had converged here, and it wasn't a good thing for him. He didn't want to make enemies for no reason. Mo Suiqing smiled. It's nothing much. I'm just here to have some fun. Can't I? Young Master Yi Xian thinks that I'm not worthy to sit at the same table as you? As soon as she finished speaking, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the men in the surroundings instantly changed. One of them walked over to Mo Suiqing's side, and he glanced coldly at Yi Xian. Miss Mo, who does he think he is? Is he even worthy to sit at the same table as you? Flap. Right at this moment, the little fatty suddenly slapped the table and he pointed furiously at the man who spoke. Who the fuck do you think you are? Are you even worthy to speak to my big brother like that? The man's eyes narrowed slightly. Do you have a death wish? The little fatty was about to speak when Yi Xian pulled him back, and then he looked at Mo Suiqing. Miss Mo, how did I offend you? Are you going to make enemies for me? Mo Suiqing blinked her eyes innocently. Make enemies? I didn't. You've wronged me. When she spoke up to this point, she sighed softly. I noticed that young master has an extraordinary bearing and I intended to get to know you. I never expected that I would be misunderstood by young Master Yi. Alas. Looks like young Master Yi feels that it's beneath him to make friends with me. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. But you've seen it for yourself. Your words and actions have caused me to become the target of public criticism. Mo Suiqing grinned. That's your problem, isn't it? Yi Xian glanced at Mo Suiqing. This woman was here to cause trouble. He stood up and pulled the little fatty and Yi Ling along. Let's go. Yi Ling nodded obediently. She picked up an apple from the table and placed it in her pocket. That was because Yi Xian liked to eat fruit after a meal. Seeing that the three of them were about to leave, Mo Suiqing's expression gradually turned cold. Brother Yi doesn't give me any face at all. Why? Are you really looking down on me? The man beside Mo Suiqing smiled. Miss Mo, why bother with this kind of person? As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Ling and mocked. It's fine if you're here to freeload, but you actually want to pack when you're leaving. I've never seen or heard of such a thing. Forget it. This kind of lowly person will probably do even more lowly things. Hearing the man's words, Yi Ling's face turned pale. She hurriedly placed the apple back on the table. When Han Xiangming heard the man's words, her expression instantly changed. How did the tragedy on the cloud shuttle occur? It was all because of this little girl. Sure enough, as soon as the man finished speaking, Yi Xian vanished on the spot like a gust of wind, and he was in front of the man when he appeared once more. The man didn't even have the time to react before Yi Xian's fist smashed against his mouth. Bang! The man was instantly blasted over 10 m away, and all the teeth in his mouth flew out while blood sprayed from his mouth. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed when they witnessed this scene. He actually attacked here. Mo Suiqing hadn't expected that the man before her would actually attack, and she gazed coldly at Yi Xian. You're quite capable, aren't you? After he blasted the man flying, Yi Xian walked directly over to Mo Suiqing. A woman like you relies on your beauty to look down on everyone, and you don't know how to respect anyone. You like to play with the men around you, and you're very happy to see them act foolishly because of your words and actions, right? To be honest, I wouldn't have any interest in a woman like you even if you lay naked in front of me. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.